Everybody, I'm gonna call to order the regular council meeting of the Village of Franklin for Monday, May 12th, 2025. Dana, if you could take, we gotta do the Pledge of Allegiance first.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, Dana, roll call, please.
Trustee Hansen?
Here.
Trustee Gates?
Here.
Trustee Fair?
Here.
Trustee Solly?
Here.
Trustee Stalfer?
Here.
Trustee Salafua? President Goldberg?
Present. Okay, so we're just missing Angelina. I don't know if she might still be coming. Our agenda. Anybody have any comments on the agenda? Otherwise, if I get a motion to adopt,
Motion to adopt.
I get a second.
Second.
Any comments? Good? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes of our last meeting, April 14th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or discussion from anyone? I actually have none.
I don't have any.
It was good. It was real good. Anybody? Nope. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next on our agenda, public requests and comments. So, anybody in the audience that would like to speak on something that's not already on the agenda?
Certainly. My name is Bruce Blant, and I live at 27175 Garden Way.
Go ahead.
And about a week or so ago, I sent an email to President Goldberg, and I copied all of the members of the council, the trustees. And the issue was the deer call that was approved in Farmington Hills by a 6-1 margin. Now, we've had issues here with deer. Everybody knows about it. They're a safety hazard because of traffic accidents. They have destroyed yards, including mine, eaten plants, vegetation. It's a real issue for a lot of people. And of course, they have ticks. So Farmington Hills estimated that they had in excess of 1,500 deer. And they've been addressing this issue for several years. They had a meeting, maybe 2-3 years ago at the former Harrison High School. They brought in the DNR. There were a lot of people that attended. Mr. Elders, who's here, who's one of my neighbors, attended that meeting. And they've had a lot of interest. They finally got together, and by a 6-1 margin, their council, city council, approved a deer call. It's going to be in 2 phases. The first phase in 2026 will involve Department of Agriculture sharpshooters, and the second phase in 2027 will involve police officers who are trained to use crossbows, shooting from tree stands down toward the ground. They're going to take the venison and donate it to shelters. So my thought was that this is a perfect opportunity for our city council, or our village council, the trustees, to try and implement something. You've got a blueprint, a template from what happened in Farmington Hills, how they got this together, and how they're going to structure it and make sure everybody's safe. Back when Bill Lamont was president, I had discussions with him about this, and he said that the council had addressed it. I can't recall if any of you were on the council at that time, maybe Trustee Hansen was, but the issue had been brought up. There was a survey that was sent out, and as I recall from talking to Mr. Lamont, 60% of the people that responded were in favor of it. So what I would like to propose is, now that you have a neighboring community right across Inkster Road that has gone through this and approved it, that we here in Franklin have an opportunity to see how the council intends to address this. Mr. Lamont told me that he wanted to work with an adjoining community or communities to partner with them to get something going. So now we have a neighboring community that is going forward with this, and I'd like to see our council somehow get this on the agenda so that we could address this issue here ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And yeah, we did speak, and it was actually part of my notes for my president's report today, now that that has taken place. So we might be discussing it a little bit.
Very good.
Thank you for your time. Gentlemen, could we get your names, please?
My name's Jack Riggin,
And I'm Hayden Reagan.
and we live at 30720 Roberts Drive.
The reason we are speaking today is in regards to the later discussion on Franklin's infrastructure priorities. We are asking for a painted and flashing crosswalk to be put on 13 Mile from Cheviot Hills to Briar Cliff Road. 13 Mile is really busy and it's hard to cross safely. A lot of us walk or bike to the village downtown to hang out at the park, play tennis, and go to the library.
Right now, there's no safe way to get across the road or down to the light at Franklin Road. We have to wait a long time for cars to stop, and even then, it feels dangerous. Some of our friends' parents won't let them walk or bike there alone because of this. My parents don't even want to walk along 13 Mile because of how many people speed.
We believe that a painted flashing crosswalk would make it a lot safer for kids, families, and anyone who wants to walk to the village. It would help us to be more independent, get exercise, and enjoy all the great stuff the village has to offer.
Please help us make our village safer by adding a crosswalk on 13 Mile. Thank you for listening to our request.
Great job, guys. Thank you very much. And yeah, that is on the agenda later. And that's part of the things that we're looking at, all kinds of ways to make 13 miles safer and better for walkability and connectivity. So yes, thank you for that. And we definitely are looking into this in the hopefully immediate future. Good job.
I'll be brief. I'm William Elders on Apple Tree, neighbor of Mr. Blanton's. We spoke a couple of times. Just in the way of giving a ditto to Mr. Blanton, I attended that meeting over at Farmington Hills Harrison High School, used to be. Excuse me. They had a speaker with the DNR talk about the problems that can result as a result of the deer. The fact that they multiply like rabbits is not an overestimation. And the remark was made, it will not be too long until the deer population exceeds the taxpayers' population. Some people like to feed the deer. Well, if you like to have a nice-looking garden like I did, or I do, I should say I did because the deer have gotten to it many times. Used to be a big fan of the Franklin Garden Walk, and I replaced plant after plant after plant. They destroy everything, and I've been waiting for something to happen regarding this issue for some time. Talked to Mr. Lamont about it. He told me that there was a survey taken some time ago, and that 2 out of 3 voters voted in the survey that was taken to get rid of the deer, to institute this cull concept. And nothing has happened since then. I don't know if it's an issue of politics or what it is, but just nothing happened. I would say, well, what's next? Well, we've got to vote on it. Well, when are we going to vote on it? Well, I don't know. And it's just a screeching halt. We have friends over for a cookout at our house, and we go out in the backyard. People want to admire the yard. They're walking around. I always have to give them a little caveat. Be careful where you step. And once a month, I'm out picking up, the deer use their backyard for a potty. The deer don't pay taxes. I do. And what can be done about it? When can something be initiated? And what are the politics involved? Do we have to get involved with the DNR? And what would be done by our community to get the ball set in motion? So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can you follow up on that?
What's that?
Can I address that?
It's not a back and forth,
We're-
but
No.
I'll wait till I go.
Stuart Wooders, 25301 Franklin Park Drive. Every year, the Scout Troop helps our community by Memorial Day to help retire American flags that have been well used. A lot of individuals don't know what to do with their tattered and flags as they've been proudly displaying them in their yard. And so one of the services that we provide every Memorial Day is to help retire those flags. So if you are looking to retire a flag, there is a constant location you can drop them off behind Seaholm High School. There's a flag retirement box that one of our Eagle Scouts created. Otherwise, between now and Memorial Day, if you want to stop by the Franklin Community Church, between 7 and 8 o'clock, the Scout Troop will be there on Thursday, 7 to 8 o'clock, and you can bring your flag then, or you can participate with us on Memorial Day at 9 o'clock in the morning, where we have someone help us retire the flags. We have a small ceremony, and we appropriately help to destroy the flags and reverently dispose of them.
Stuart, are you talking about this Thursday?
So this Thursday, you can drop them off at the Franklin Community Church for, if you can't make it to Monday,
Okay.
Memorial Day for
Right.
a retirement. But otherwise, those are the three options. So this Thursday, following Thursday, from 7 to 8 at the Franklin Community Church, or on Memorial Day at 9 a.m.
Okay.
So, yep.
Is there a drop box by the church, or?
So there's a drop box by Seaholm High School. That's the only drop box that I know of. And if you come in off Lincoln from the south side of the school and go around to the parking lot on the south side, and you kind of walk your way around the building, you'll see looks like a giant bird box.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a flag disposal box. They'll have a sign on it. One of our Eagle Scouts created it
But
a
will
few
there
years
be
ago.
one at the church also, or do you?
No, just go inside and you'll see a bunch of scouts
Okay,
with
all right.
uniforms on. Just hand it to one of us. We'll take care of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
We get an email from. Yeah, we got a number of emails. Are you guys gonna read those into the record?
To my knowledge, we received one email.
There was a couple that weren't read last month.
I don't have those, and they weren't sent to either the clerk's email nor my email, but we do have one. Dana, please go up to the podium by the microphone and read it in.
Okay, I do apologize. I'm probably going to mispronounce her name. Dear Council, my name is Katie Bongis. My husband and I recently moved our family to Franklin from the New York area. When he joined the local practice as a orthopedic spine surgeon, serving patients across Metro Detroit. I work as a communication director, and most recently as I lead a strategic communication for Christy Turkelson Burns and her global maternal health organization. Wanting to plant roots and invest in the community long-term, we purchased a home on Helmandale subdivision. We were drawn to Franklin because of its quiet charm, reputation for safety, and convenient commute. I'm writing with deep concerns about the recent freeway closure and the resulting surge in local traffic, which has significantly impacted our neighborhood. Not only do we have to experience multiple attempts at car break-ins in our own driveway from unfamiliar vehicles passing through, but the influx of traffic made everyday driving feel increasingly dangerous. Each morning, I turn left from Helmandale Drive onto 13 Mile. The long backup of cars headed towards Telegraphs severely limits visibility, and I find myself at real risk of trying to exit our neighborhood with my infant sons in the car. In light of this, I would like to respectfully request two measures to help improve safety and traffic flow. One, adjustment of the traffic light timing in the intersection of Telegraph and 13 Mile will help ease the congestion and allow safer entries and exits for residents into the surrounding communities. Installation of a conflict mirror at the exit of Helmandale Drive into 13 Mile Road to provide better visibility for drivers making a left turn. Ideally, this would be accompanied by road painting to instruct drivers to line, not block the road exit. Sidewalks between Telegraph and Franklin Road to reduce the reliance on driving on congested roads while visiting downtown Franklin. I want to emphasize that the conflict mirror and the visibility are urgent needs. The current blind left turn is not only inconvenient, it is dangerous. Every day it feels like we are one call closer from having a serious accident, especially with the volume and the speed of the cars
I
passing
think it's
through.
time.
How much more is left?
It's just one more sentence.
Okay.
This simple safety improvement could make the immediate difference in a preventing harm. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Dana.
Anybody else? Wanna say something?
Hello, my name is Emily Hutchison. I live at 32800 Brandingham, just over there. I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and right now, the center of the heart of Franklin is this community park, and so we spend a lot of time at the park with our 2 little kids. And I don't know if there's any parents on here, but if you are a parent, you've probably read The Anxious Generation, and so I'm actively looking for ways to give my daughters more independence and more freedom. We moved to Franklin because we felt like it was a very safe community. Unfortunately, there's a real speeding problem on Wellington, and I would love to, there's no stop signs between Franklin Road and Carroll, and the blind turn around like Brandingham area is really tough for me to send my 7-year-old on her bike alone. So I would love to get a crosswalk or something from Normandy across to the park, to the parking lot, because this is really the heart of Franklin. And I think I should be able to send my 7-year-old to the park on her bike without worrying. It's only 7 or 8 houses away. So I just love for the council to consider that. And I think it will help as we think about how to bring more businesses to downtown Franklin and more of that foot traffic for the folks on the north side. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, close public comments. Next are reports of village officers and agents. Chief Lawson, how are you, sir?
Good evening. Any questions regarding the monthly report? All right, the email that Dana just read from Kate Varghese, I believe her name is. She mentioned the larceny from vehicles that we had several months ago in her subdivision. Good news is we do have a person in custody. Bloomfield Township, Troy, and us were able to coordinate. That person is safely up at the Oakland County Jail. So great job by Detective Wells on that case. So there's some good news. We'll be sending out information to the residents advising them of that. Other news is that this coming Friday, we have the Jewish Family Fest out behind the library. Saturday, we have Touch a Truck over in Bingham Farms at Bingham Farms Elementary. And then Saturday night, we have Under the Lights this year, Franklin Association Baseball. So we'll have a bigger presence, police presence at those events, and we're going to be bringing out our new electric bikes that cost the village nothing, donated by a resident. And so 4 of our officers are trained in that, so you'll see officers out on electric bikes, giving extra patrol and being with the community. So
What's that last event?
the Franklin Association Baseball.
What is that?
What did you said Under the Lights?
Yes, my understanding is that, well, maybe Meg can,
Yeah.
It's gonna be a night game, and we're going to bring in lights, so they're gonna be able to have one of the first baseball games back at night, keeping with that tradition. It will be held on Saturday, so there will be some lights, like Chief mentioned, coming in for the game. It is temporary, it's just for that event at this time, and it's to support our Franklin Ball Field and bring back a night game over here.
Good for them. That's great.
yes.
And so I'm looking for who to root for. So who are the players? And, tell us about
I'm
that.
assuming it's
I'm not sure, honestly.
I don't think we
They're-
were given
they're-
the teams that are playing.
Little
It's
League
not the cops
kids.
against somebody?
No, it's not the police. We'll be there to root the kids on, but.
You know, we did, years ago, we did Franklin Parents versus the Kids.
Yeah, I
And
thought
back
so.
at that point, you know, it was slow pitch and all that. And then we did it again many years later, and the kids were kicking our asses. And it was like, okay, so this is a whole different thing now.
Should be a good event. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Abubaw.
Good evening. Actually, Kurt was saying it's Tigers versus Yankees. It's a doubleheader. And then it was Los Angeles versus
Doubleheader.
right, versus Franklin police officers. So there is a lot going on in the village of Franklin. On Thursday, there's going to be a prescribed burn on Watley. This is from a contractor who's Ann Arbor based, who does this professionally. The intent is to remove invasive species, weeds and foliage that shouldn't be on the property. We have been in contact with them over the past 2 years and received an email last week, with reference to the date. This obviously will be weather dependent. The company will be bringing in their own staff to control this, so the fire department will have let me go back. Hopefully, we'll have no interface with this activity. But the contractor has a good amount of history and was formerly the Parks and Recs director for the city of Ann Arbor.
And that's on private property.
On private property, yes, sir. This started with a discussion with Roger back in 2023. With regard to that, you also have our written report, and one thing I wanted to highlight, and I just passed on to Meg, was an updated, clean copy of our budget. I know there are some discussions that are taking place, that have taken place, and will continue to take place with regard to the fiscal year 2025-2026 fire department budget. There are a number of activities that are involved with the fire department at present, namely enhancing our personnel, our staffing at the station, so that we can operate a transport-capable ambulance. We do have the license, and we are supplementing our full-time personnel right now with volunteers on a stipend basis. But one of the things that we discovered during COVID, actually two things. Number one, our private EMS provider, who is still going to be transporting in the vast majority of situations, is finding it very difficult to get their own staffing, plus with having a contract in a major city located nearby, it's very difficult for us to get timely response. The second is with reference to our EMS run volume as a result of or during the time of COVID. So we're finding being short-staffed and having more people relying on 911 EMS service rather than other venues necessitates our expansion of services. Lastly, and as always, we have a lack of volunteers that live nearby, so we need to make sure that any requests for service that are being done timely and with the patient's needs in mind. We're not looking at doing this as a build service. We're not looking at doing this as a service to handle anything but those who are in need of getting to a hospital quickly, i.e. they don't need an ambulance, they need a surgeon. We also are looking at this in terms of where we have a stable patient, but we cannot get a private provider, and it does not work to use mutual aid. So these will be case-dependent situations. There are other factors involved, but I wanted to let you know that we're going to be starting that capability June 1st. We have some additional trainings that are taking place internally towards that end, and we are working with 3 hospitals in this regard: Henry Ford, West Bloomfield, Corewell Health, Royal Oak, Beaumont, Royal Oak, and Providence, which is Ascension, Southfield. With reference to our budget, I have passed on some clean copies, which, just like every other year, explains the difference between the present fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, and a couple of words to explain the differences within each of the line items. So other than that, wanted to thank the village too, because over the past month we've initiated some good discussions between the fire department and both villages, Franklin and Bingham Farms, towards determining, first off, answering any questions, not just related to the budget, but in the overall. Second, looking at ways are looking at the future towards trying to lower expenses further for the fire department, because obviously our only contracts are with Franklin Bingham Farms and 7 homes in Southfield Township, but we're looking towards managing our funding that much more efficiently and effectively. And the third thing that we're looking forward to is moving towards the future. So determining services that are requested by the village, determining capabilities that can be provided, and trying to find that middle ground as to what we can do in a financially effective way. So pending your questions, that'll conclude my report.
Anybody have any questions?
What were the invasive species? And is that something citizens should be looking out for in their own yards?
You know, I couldn't tell you the specifics, but on the property, a lot of this deals with what would be considered weeds. So I don't know, I'm not a gardener, I just know that there was a determination made and the best way to approach was a prescribed burn. So but I should also say, when they're out there, there will be signage. I am told, or I had the contractor agree to notify the neighbors, so that way when they see smoke, they're not going to think that there's a field fire or anything like that that's uncontrolled.
Great, thanks.
Okay?
Anyone else? All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Lance? Good evening.
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list for this month totals $100,109.32. There wasn't much action at all. It was a very light month. The amount of the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending. The expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. There wasn't many large entries. There was a smaller entry of $4,839.80, and it's for pavement striping we paid to the Oakland County Road Commission. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations, and the list of account balances in the package is of May the 1st. We hold at First Merchant Bank. Any questions? Okay?
Thanks, Lance.
Sure.
So Meg and Dana, I'm just noticing, so when we move special reports up, I think it would normally go after submission of bills, so let's just move, we'll come back to it, but in the future, yeah, we normally do bills right after Lance and then special reports. But we'll follow the current agenda. So next item is our special report section, and let's start with myself.
Do we look at the bills now or not?
No, we'll just do them when we're done with our reports. We'll follow the agenda. So a couple items for me. First of all, I received this from the Historical Society. As we all know, we have been celebrating the 200th bicentennial of Franklin for the last year and a half, and it came to conclusion just recently. So this was received from the Historical Society. It's been a banner year. We kicked off our heels at the barn dance, honored our veterans on Memorial Day, enjoyed strawberry shortcake at the church, exchanged seeds at the library, and celebrated our 200th birthday with a potluck and birthday cake on the village green. This year was filled with murals, Franklin on foot signs, and historic banners on the light posts. A huge thank you to everyone who participated, flipping burgers, dogs, and pancakes, building scarecrows, providing music, modeling vintage clothing, reuniting with Franklin classmates, and sharing kind words for the planned events. The bicentennial has come to an end. Be ready to buckle up for next year. We'll be celebrating America's 250th birthday. And personally, I'd like to thank the Historical Society, which also includes at the head of that group, and Bill Lamott, Jeff Kopelman, John Simon, for their tireless efforts. All of the installations that were throughout the village were really wonderful additives and really added to our historical character. I don't know to what extent they're going to stay, but I kind of like them. So just wanted to thank everybody in the Historical Society for that last year and a half of various events. Second item was going to be the Deer Coalition. The Deer Coalition. So this did start with President Lamott maybe a year or so ago. There has been a monthly meeting of various village representatives and community residents that has been led by a gentleman in Farmington Hills. Between Farmington Hills and the city of Southfield, they were the four leaders in coming up with first the background information and putting together all the data, and then working with with Eagle, Department of Natural Resources, and the local police departments to come up with this concept of a deer cull, which would be to, as the residents mentioned, have specialized individuals do a certain cull of the excess deer population. So I have been waiting to see how everything transpired in those two communities. The first was Farmington Hills, as they mentioned, approved at 6-1. Southfield was working with Farmington Hills, so both of those are neighboring communities of ours, and I'm waiting to see what transpires in Southfield. Now that Farmington has brought it public, a lot of the data that they assembled, there's a really nice PowerPoint that Mr. Farmer in Farmington Hills put together, which we can now get our hands on. We can ourselves begin to take a look at the concept. I believe that the deer problem in Franklin is as no different than it is in Farmington Hills. I think we all struggle with our gardens, and we need to look at various ways, if there are any, to address the deer problem. So the first will be, I'm gonna get that information from Farmington Hills, and I'll bring it to us. We'll maybe decide on it, if we're gonna have a committee look at it first, but bring it to council, let the PowerPoint be played, and then begin to get some feedback from residents in some of our various ways that we communicate, and set up maybe some meetings to discuss the concept. Really outside of that, the only other way that I've come up with, if anyone else has ideas, is we could have our planning commission take a look at the idea of making our rear yard fences a little taller. We have 4-foot maximums. So the only other way to try and keep them out would be to maybe make fences a little taller, but I know that wouldn't be really well received by some, although others might like it. So anyways, that was the point of my discussion, and now recently residents have started reaching out to me. So it's something that we'll begin to look at, and if it's something that the village in a whole is in favor of, then we could get involved, and if not, then the call will go on around us and maybe have a trickle down to us. So that's all that I have. Oh, I take that back, one last thing. So for our cell phone wireless communications issues, as everyone knows, T-Mobile was the first of the 3 companies that began recently rolling out some of their proposed small cell nodes. Just wanted to let everyone know that AT&T has now gotten, I guess, all of their funding together, and they've reached out to let us know that in the near future they're going to want to start considering new locations to enhance the AT&T cell coverage. So that was just kind of a heads up. That's it.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
May is National Jewish History Month, and coincidentally, right now in the village of Franklin, there is a drive to assist the Judaic Art Studio, a current and soon-to-be thriving business, we hope, moving from their current location into what was the Gorbach Photo Studio and then Tangerine Wine. They are planning on moving in short order and tripling their space. And there is a pledge drive underway right now where we have a matching benefactor who has generously donated to double all pledges. I serve as an ambassador, President Goldberg does as well. I call your attention to the Judaic Art Studio website and pages on Facebook and social media where you'll find links. Any contribution you make towards the betterment of providing support would be greatly appreciated by Rabbi Benzi and his wonderful family. They've devoted themselves to the education and creativity of providing Judaic art, and it's a really great studio, and we should be proud to have them in our retail environment and soon to be in a much bigger space. So I'd like to make that mention.
Thanks for sharing that, Mike.
And lastly, the issue that some may or may not be aware of relating to Next and the YMCA and the Birmingham Board has gotten very, very challenging, and that the Birmingham Council has decided to push this entire project off. They were going to vote on a millage in August. The building has, the expansion of the project has grown dramatically from what it was originally intended to be. And Next is an absolutely fantastic seniors facility. We have many Franklin villagers that avail themselves. We provide meals on, they provide Meals on Wheels. I'm one of the members of that charity. And many, many other things. So there'll be more information forthcoming, but for right now, the entirety of the project has been tabled. And there is a date certain in which Next is going to have to vacate their current location at Midvale School. And it is 2026. And the YMCA, which some of you may or may not know, sold their building, falling into financial distress, to the city of Birmingham. Birmingham had committed itself to a seniors facility, and then the YMCA sort of came back in and said how much they want to stay part of the Birmingham community. And unfortunately, the PR aspects of that painted Next in a very poor light. They've retained the services of Jake Serwer and his Espresso PR firm. Jake is also the PR firm for the Franklin Oyster Bar. I'll be having him on my show tomorrow. And it's a very convoluted mess. And I'll talk more about it next month. Hopefully we'll have some resolution by then.
It's not good.
That's all I have.
Pam?
I want to go next because I wanted just to piggyback on the
Go ahead.
comments about Next.
Sure.
Being aware of what had transpired at the last Birmingham Commission meeting regarding Next, and they're pausing it, but they're having a hard time selling the bond. It's gotten bloated, and the issue that Mike alluded to is far worse than he described. As a village, I'd like to make a proposal to the staff and to council to see if you'd support something like this. It's unclear when Birmingham will resolve whatever issues they have, number one. Number two, Mike's right, Next is going to be homeless because there's a lease with the school district that's up and they have kids coming into that building. Franklin, Beverly Hills, and Bingham Farms have a need to, we have significant senior populations in our 3 municipalities. I'd like to suggest, we can discuss it whenever and however you want, that we get together with our sister communities and pull Chris, the director from Next, into that conversation and start looking at what we think we need by way of senior services. What exists right now, and what doesn't, where are the gaps between the needs and what we have, so that we can proceed in some way. Right now, we are totally at the behest of a temperamental Birmingham Commission. I have been to their meetings. It's rough. And
To say the least.
I don't see a way to break this loose, but in light of all of this, I think we need to look after Franklin residents.
Pam,
Yes.
are there any services available through, is it the area or agency?
On Aging?
Yes, that one.
There are a lot of senior services,
Mhm.
and Franklin, which has 72 people who either use or are members of Birmingham Next, is the least used of all of Beverly, Bingham, and Franklin. There is the Birmingham Area Agency on Aging. We have the Jewish Community Centers. We have country clubs. We have a number of different agencies that provide some focused services for senior citizens. Next actually cooperates with several of them. And that's all I know. All I'm saying is I think it's time for a conversation that's focused on what do we want? What are we willing to invest in? Who could collaborate with us? And I think there's a number of different outcomes that are possible with that.
I know Farmington Hills has a senior center.
They do.
So maybe when we talk to them about
Yeah.
deer, we could ask because
Yeah.
they have the new community center.
The former Harrison High
Yeah,
School.
is the
pretty
Hawk, but then
amazing.
their old community center is almost entirely devoted. The
Yeah.
one on 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Costic Center is almost
Yeah.
entirely devoted to
Yeah.
seniors. And it, when I get their brochure, it looks like it's open.
It's
to
really good.
everyone. Yeah, they have
It's really
like
good, yeah.
outings and museums
Yeah.
and support.
It's closer even than.
Yeah, it's 11 in Inkster.
Yeah.
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
11 in Inkster.
So the conversations with Birmingham have been going on for almost 2 years now. I'm looking to make some kind of, have the conversation, let's set out a path and look at those options that are available, and that we would decide how we want to augment or not, what's existing.
So I guess based off my reaction to that is, like, can we refine that down a little bit more? Because if they're going to lose their space, it's not a matter of what services they have, it's what's their default position, right?
They have a contract with Birmingham, and they intend to exercise that contract, so.
To stay in current location?
To stay
No,
with them.
no, to
See, that's what
to move into the YMCA building.
Okay, I don't want to take any action tonight on this because I.
No, there is
I'm
no
not-
action.
No, right, I'm just saying I'm not
I'm
informed
just
enough.
I'm just trying to bring it up for people.
Yeah, absolutely, and I want to tie
understand.
out with both of you at the end, like, probably not tonight, but at some point, because I know I have heard from your reports that it's been messy or not ideal, but I don't know what that means, so I'll follow up and just get a better
Okay.
understanding of everything happening.
Well,
Yeah.
Dan and Pam and I have been intimately involved, and we know and have followed this, the travails of this, and it's a sad story. And they're a wonderful organization. Now, are they the most important organization for Franklin? We only have 72 current members, but we're aging, and so there will be more. And we do have to provide services for seniors, but, and they do have a wonderful curriculum there. I mean, they do some great stuff.
Yeah, they've got a great.
So I'm optimistic there is a Plan B. I've been pushing them
Yeah.
to exercise Plan B
Right.
for about a year, and now it's finally
And
coming.
just one really quick bow on it, at least from my perspective, is you had mentioned that they were up for a millage, the bond has increased. Does that mean that the monies or the amounts that they're looking for, that Next is looking for, has gone up? Or is it tied to Birmingham somehow?
It's all about the YMCA.
The issue is that it was set to move, the YMCA was gonna leave. Birmingham got in a political dispute about the loss of a community pool that was previously provided by the Y, and then decided that though this building had already been purchased, it now must accommodate the Y as well, which complicated our contributions to Next because essentially that building is owned by the city of Birmingham, bonded out by their residents, and then we also pay a fee into that. They've paused that because they couldn't finalize language to bring to the people, and they were on a deadline to do so. So that was part of the reason, and then a lot of politics have gone in. Where I would caution is, one, we pay $10,000 into that, which is a heck of a deal. This is a multi-million-dollar budget. We, in the 3 communities, are not able to support anywhere near those services without that, A. B, Next has provided such great services to us and been such a great community partner that exploring other options could end our relationship with Next. And are we sure that we want to, take an organization that has been so cherished by our community and so supported and throw our contributions to a different center and to provide those other services in their time of need and turmoil? I think that could be very concerning. I've been in separate meetings of Next that are just the municipal leaders. We all recognize what a benefit it is to use Next as the organization to provide senior services, and are very vocal about the fact that we cannot financially support those services without Next, especially given the very low amount that we pay in to provide all of these great services. So I think that, just like Birmingham, just like everyone else, we're looking for some clarity on what the next steps are for the Next organization, to see if they have a plan B. But I don't know that vetting other options and thinking about moving our support of senior services in any other kind of direction is necessarily a move that we're ready to make. And I know that we wouldn't be able to, any change in our senior services would definitely cause an increase into what we're paying for that.
So I would request that the fact that the council had a discussion goes into our record for tonight. Number two, just to be clear, I wasn't looking for a decision or any action other than I'd like to have a conversation about it for the reasons I stated, because we're accountable to the residents here, and we have chosen to provide services for seniors via Next. Not advocating going somewhere else, just think everybody should know what's out, what options are available, and what other services are available, and should we get to that place, where might we want to go?
So to vet other senior services?
Yeah, if we get to that place, that's it. I want them to, but not now. I want them to.
Not right now.
I want them to know, Birmingham Commission and the Next board, to know that we are talking about it as a village, and that we're not going to be silent.
Okay.
That's it. It's just to start.
So no direction. I am confused on what my action item is as staff right now.
You don't have to do anything other than make sure that it gets into the minutes.
Okay.
I was just trying to bring up the issue so that people would know about it,
Yeah.
but I'm not asking for anything. And
Okay.
David, we can have a sidebar, and I'll bring you up to speed on more detail.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Abby, you got anything? Dan?
Nothing, thank you.
David?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. One, I don't know if we currently are doing so, but if we could include in our weekly newsletter an update about the retiring of the flags, I think that'd be helpful to have a write-up. The second thing that I wanted to provide around the Deer Coalition is if we did do a study, can we try and resurface that so that, again, just council's informed around it? I know that deer are beloved within Franklin, but I will say I'm from South Dakota, where deer were a huge part of the commerce there, and watching deer populations was a very, very important thing, because inflation, the interesting thing about deer is when you don't call them, they call themselves. There's two common diseases that happen within overconcentration of deer populations. It's blue tongue and chronic wasting disease, or I think it's like zombie deer is what the nickname is for it. And so what ends up happening is it really quickly spreads throughout the deer population and wipes them out drastically. And this year, chronic wasting disease has been noted and flagged and has found its way into the state of Ohio. So again, it's not just, I know people think about it from a safety perspective as far as like their cars running into a disease, but it's equally a safety issue with regard to the deer population itself from, again, the overpopulation and the spread of disease. And then the last thing is, not sure, but were we supposed to have taken a vote on the police vehicle?
Yes. Yep. Chief and I actually just talked about it. I was gonna re-caveat to that during my admin report, but this seems like a good segue. If we could take a pause and call Chief back up to the podium so that we could get that order of business taken care of.
Sorry, missed
Is that okay? All right. Thank you.
I knew I forgot something. Questions on the request for a new
So we're
police
buying a
vehicle?
vehicle.
Yeah, so
Why?
if you're not aware of it, a little while ago, a week or two ago, one of the officers was responding to a medical emergency. A series of maybe poor decisions on his part resulted in a one-car crash that totaled the vehicle. Fortunately, MMRMA has reimbursed us for the cost of that vehicle, and I was able to find another vehicle at Gorno Ford on the state pricing, and it's actually a pretty good deal right now. So I would request that we go ahead and purchase that vehicle, because we're down to 3 cars right now.
You need a motion?
I just need your approval.
I would make
Yes.
a motion to purchase the police vehicle.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I don't want to get into details, but there was an investigation of what happened, and there was the proper discipline. So,
It was what?
the proper discipline to the officer.
That hole took a hit.
Yes.
Do you have any update on the state pricing impact? Is it gonna stay the same through 2025, do you think? Because I would be in favor of like buying things now if you think in 2026.
I certainly can ask that question. I know the tariffs are kind of coming and going and
Yeah.
in flux, I guess you'd say. This price was, I couldn't believe the price. I thought it was great, and the gentleman that told me about it said, yeah, that's a great price. So I don't know if they have any other vehicles available. I could circle back to you and see what the board wants to do.
No, I was just wondering if you had heard from other
I
like
haven't.
chiefs. Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, you got any more?
Nope, that's it.
Angelina?
Yes. Would it be plausible to think that Franklin would be a recipient of the calling of Farmington Hills and Southfield, of the deer calling? Because our deer probably cross borders.
Like, as in, would the calling happening in Farmington Hills, could we have an
Could it
effect of that?
impact
Yes,
that
absolutely,
in a positive way?
absolutely.
Okay, okay. And then they're gonna start as early as 2026, right? Was that what the council voted?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm thinking it should help the Franklin deer population. I learned that those public comments were sent to the email on the website, which
That's
is.
been corrected.
Okay, okay, perfect.
That was
So
corrected after the last time that was brought to our
Okay.
attention to provide clarity. There was an old admin.email address that was discontinued about 3 years ago. That was still listed on the website. That was corrected about a month ago. And I think it's a good time. Public comments, if you're unable to make them, you need to email them to the clerk here in Franklin, and then they'll be read aloud on the record.
Okay, and then another thing, the contact us on the website has only numbers. Do you think you guys can add your
Yes.
emails next to the numbers? So that way when people can send an email instead of just calling? And that way it doesn't like tie up your front desk. And then there's also like the streetscape updates from 2021.
The website's undergoing an entire restructure, even down to the way that it looks, but that's a summer project. It's very involved for myself to do that, but there's a lot of outdated information on
Just
there.
the emails, I guess,
Yep.
would be like the first thing.
Absolutely. So our emails are listed on our individual pages. The reason we normally don't do them on Contact Us, but I will, is because then they get picked up on scams. So then scammers go to Contact Us, grab email addresses, and now your email is just subject to a ton of scams. So they are listed, like if you were to click under clerk, under administrator, mine's there. But I mean, we can test it out, and I think if we get an influx of, junk emails and scams, then maybe we readdress it. I'm absolutely open to putting it on and giving it a test run.
Okay.
Could you set up a second email alias, so instead of, you can't,
We can, it gets complicated, sometimes stuff gets locked in other ones, then we update email addresses. Did you get the alias updated? It's sort of back to this old admin email that used to exist. So I think not having an in-house IT department makes stuff like that a little bit more difficult, and we can definitely try it. I mean, it depends. It's just bots that grab them, so I can't predict when or where that would happen. And in reality, our emails are already on the website, so you would think if a bot was going to grab it, they probably already can. So I have no objection to, in the meantime, while we're updating the website and going through that full rehaul, adding email addresses. And I think that's a great segue as you continue to use the the website or have other suggestions, start emailing those over to staff. We'll compile those because the website hasn't undergone a full update in a long period of time. It's very clunky. Not even just the information that's out there, just even down to the logos that we're using are not consistent. It needs a full rebrand. We've been working with our representative for Revise to go ahead and orchestrate that. However, it involves just a lot of time from us. So that's a project that we're going to start here at the end of June. I think it's probably going to take about a month and a half to get done, and then we'll have something fresh, something easier to use, something a little bit more mobile friendly as well. But in the meantime, it's a great time for feedback, so we can incorporate that in our changes.
So, just to close that out, any of the emails that were sent to that old inbox, you're not getting at all? Like, it's not being forwarded to you? Okay.
It's
So
because
they
they're-
have to resend them?
Absolutely, and that's unfortunate, but apparently because they're all linked, so about 3 years ago, the village changed the emails to franklinvillagemi.gov, and it used to be like franklinmi.us.something. That's the old email for the admin, so that isn't even an email that we were paying to maintain apparently, but and again, that transition happened about 3 years ago, but the website wasn't scrubbed to
Okay,
fix
so
it.
I'll just tell them to resend it to the clerk.
To the clerk, and of course you can always CC me on it, but it really needs to go to Dana so that we can make sure that we get them over there. And like I said, I've gone through our website to remove that old email address and replace it with appropriate ones, but if someone finds one in a different spot, please let us know, because we're trying to correct that.
Second, trustee Sally got selected for Oakland County 40 under 40 for being a change maker and making meaningful impact in the community through innovation, leadership, and service. They selected 40 leaders across industries and communities, so we have a local.
Congratulations.
And they're having a ceremony early June by the Oakland County Executive. There's like a press kit. I'll forward it to you if you guys want to
Very cool.
post it or include it in the newsletter.
Very, very nice.
And then the last thing, just I want to say I was so happy to see a lot of public comment today, and I know it's a really hard time and a really difficult season for people to get here. So just know that even if you're saying something that has already been said, it does help us refocus our priorities and be reminded that the issue still remains. We're all volunteers up here. We're here once a month. So like a lot of stuff gets thrown at us. Meg manages it, but you know, it always is good to reinforce what your priorities are and what your issues are, because then when we're here, we can address it. So thank you. If public speaking isn't your thing, please feel free to email any of us, email the clerk. She will read into the record. And also when you see us in the community, stop us. I mean, I can speak for myself, but I know everyone on here is the same. Stop us, talk to us, let us know how you feel. The last thing about Main
What
Street.
about tipping us?
Not a funny
Occasional.
joke. No tips, please,
Yeah.
for the council members.
So, Main Street Franklin, the board has lost some people, so if anyone is interested in helping develop the businesses downtown, I know there was some public comments about, the, you know, lack of businesses and bringing more energy and vibrancy. We would very much welcome your input. We have a bylaws that doesn't require you to be in Franklin. So if there's someone nearby that feels, you know, dedicated to the cause, it's another volunteer position and wants to dedicate their time, hours, and energy, or even a skill set to Main Street, please, Mike and I are on the board. We would really love your ideas and appreciate your contributions. And that goes for all the boards. They're all volunteers. So if any of you guys feel called a public service, we are going to embrace you with open arms.
Thank you. Meg?
All right, so the first thing, we talked a lot about DEER today. I also attend the DEER Coalition meetings, review the PowerPoints and information that's been passed out. Again, this is very collaborative. It's been happening for years, and we're starting to see some movement in Farmington Hills tomorrow. I have my monthly lunch with all the city managers in Oakland County, and our agenda item is the deer, especially the action that we just saw in Farmington Hills. So it's good timing to talk about that today. I'm assuming that a lot of the information I'm able to gather tomorrow is consistent with what we've heard before, but it'll be interesting to really be able to speak to the city manager and get their perspective of how they took the information and implemented it. So I'll be able to report back more with that after my lunch tomorrow. We've been working really hard to improve communication. So if you came in earlier today, you would have saw a slideshow that was just a few community updates that we had. They were some about the bicentennial and some of the pictures that were shown, again, to the Judaic Art Studio and the movement over there with some links. This is going to be a theme that we're continuing throughout before public meetings. I would like to be able to display little updates from our community groups. So if you are a member of a community group, you have an event or an exciting accomplishment or some pictures or some updates, and you'd like to get included in this very informal little presentation that's going to play before public meetings, feel free to email myself, and I will go ahead and get you added into the list there. Staff will be bringing on a Franklin High School intern towards the end of June. She's currently a Cranbrook student. Predominantly, she's going to be assisting with filing and digitizing old records. It is the goal by the end of this summer to have the complete basement cleaned out, all of those documents scanned, and be able to start effectively using that space for storage. Likewise, we have additional storage in the basement of the Krieger House that hold a lot of old public records pertaining to public safety. That all needs to be cleaned out as well. And another thing that the intern will be working on is just content generation. So she won't be responsible for any sort of communication plan. However, we'll have her out in the community taking pictures, at events, making videos, those type of things to help supplement some of the communications and the content out on our social media. So we're all looking forward to that. We have been pretty busy over here the last few weeks, just getting ready for our budget, which will be presented at our next meeting in June. We'll bring forward the 2026 budget for adoption. Council has gotten access to a report. I encourage you to continue to review the report and let me know what questions you have so that when we get here on the night of the 26th, we're ready to talk about the budget in general as a whole and just help move it through that process. I'm going to roll right into a Main Street report since Susan is on vacation, and I have very little update for the Main Street other than I do want to just mention one more time. Again, the Judaic Art Studio is going to find its permanent home in the Gorback building, which was formerly the Tangerine Wine Space. And I've spent a great deal of time with Musia, speaking to all of the great services that they're provided and what they're planning on doing over there. So we're really excited. They're very active participants in our Main Street. Musia sits on our board, and they've just been such a wonderful community partner. I want to make sure that we give them their time. So they've launched a crowdfunding campaign. It's judaicstudio.com. if you wish to support, and for the next 2 days, any contribution is matched. After those 2 days, the crowdfunding campaign will still be opened, but the match of the donations will end. So act quickly there. So what they're really looking to do is a wide range of community events. They're going to have art for a cause, a Sunday art room. They are really focused on bringing in community members from all over the gamut and having a safe spot for them to gather and work together and connect. So we're very excited to have them over there. And additionally, as we've kind of discussed here, this weekend on May 16th, this Friday, there's going to be a family festival. It's going to be the Jewish Family Festival. And if you haven't attended in the past, it's quite the ordeal. Lots of activities for your family. It brings in a big crowd, all kinds of unique, fun things to do with your family in the summer. If you have questions about the event, the website is jewishfamilyfestival.com. And again, to donate and get into the crowdfunding campaign, that website is judaicstudio.com. If you missed that or have any additional questions, I know Musia is always available, but you could also email me and I can get you in touch with whoever you need to. Thank you.
Do you have an update on the Comerica?
There is no update from us on Comerica. We have absolutely no knowledge of who that building has sold to. Neither does any of the leadership at Comerica. So If in fact the building is sold, which is what I've been told, it would have been very quiet. No one has been over here to access any records or documents. We haven't had anything filed at the county or the township. Leadership at Comerica doesn't know who or what would have purchased the building or what the plans are. So, it really gets out of our hands to some point. We're triggered immediately by, phone calls. Oftentimes a real estate agent will contact us before a deal is over to ask for specific information about the property. None of that has happened. So we are in limbo, just waiting to hear who that is. Obviously very curious, huge staple for us here in the community, especially with all the public parking that they have. So we're looking to get more information on that, but right now it's outside of our ability to gather. I would assume that very quickly we end up hearing who it is, since I've heard these rumors for the last month or so. They're probably coming to a head here shortly, and as soon as we know, we'll provide that in an update.
We'll know next week.
Okay, there we go.
With regards to Main Street, would you or Susan be willing to, at an upcoming meeting, walk the council through the Main Street work plan for this year? I'd like to know, because several of us are talking about potential projects in the village, and alignment with priorities and other plans has come up for discussion. And that seems like it's one that could be in the mix, but generally, I'd love to know what the priorities of the board are.
Sure, that's definitely within Susan's capacity. She's the executive director of Main Street. I don't even attend every Main Street meeting. That's based on my availability. But I can make sure that at the next meeting, Susan provides you with that update.
I don't think we've updated yet, because remember we had a couple email exchanges.
The-
Not with you, I'm saying.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't know. I'm not the Main
Street.
Street-
Updated the work plan.
Not the Main Street director. It was updated in February when they went through their accreditation. I don't know what updates had taken place since then, but we can get Susan back for a status report and to provide copies of that.
Thank you.
One real quick question, and I was gonna bring it up during my report. Do we need to do an approval for the Under the Lights event?
No, because we actually changed the civic event structure at the last meeting, allowing me to give the admin the final write-off on it. So to me, it was really important that we talked about it publicly, and I don't mind talking about it again because there are lights. And so the lights are going to be different than what you normally see. The lights are going to be brighter, and they're going to be here temporarily on that evening. So I would like residents to be aware of that. We are going to have, like Chief mentioned, increased police presence down there. But administratively, that was a decision that I signed off on because I think that it's so important that we're supporting our Franklin baseball. And when we talk about the future of these fields, it helps us to be able to visualize their true potential. So for everyone in the community, I think that it's important to, mention that that's going to be happening, and you can expect to see those lights. And we're open to your feedback afterwards. If you have feedback as a resident with the lights and the crowd or anything like that, please send an email, come to our next meeting and talk to us about it. But at this point, since I had the ability to give that approval, I'm in full support as an administration of that, and I'd like to at least give it a go and see how it goes.
100%. Yeah, the reason, I just wanted to make sure that we were supporting them, right, in case there's a lot of noise. If there's any noise around it, I wanted to be on the record fully supporting it, so.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning that again, because I think it's important that we talk about. It's definitely something different than we've seen, and so I'd ask the community, give it a shot, and then come and know we're here for your feedback, and we can adjust as we move forward. But I can say that I don't have anything that would give me an indication that this would be a regular occurrence or would even happen again this season.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stuart, Planning Commission report.
I want to thank Pete Halleck for representing Planning Commission last month. I was indisposed as I got to participate with the high school robotics program at Worlds and down in Houston, which was a lot of fun to help out that team. So let's see Holman Grove's robotics program. So some of your kids can look forward to that going forward. It's a lot of fun. So this last month we started working more towards how we can help the historic district with regards to some of the ordinances that don't make it possible for them to participate in some of the privileges that other areas in our village get with regards to privacy fences and as well as other access because their lot sizes are so small, it excludes them from certain activities. So we started talking about that last month and hope to have more discussions with the Historic Commission as well as those that live downtown that are affected. Also, we reviewed the annual report, which should be going across your desks soon for the activities we did last year. So those are the main points to talk about, and then you have a few items tonight that you'll have second reading as well as a first reading to discuss.
Okay, you gonna be here?
I will be.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Stuart?
Stuart, do you know the master plan history? Or can you share it with the infrastructure committee at some point in the next 2 months?
Yes, please.
I can kind of play middleman and give some clarity.
Thank you.
So what we're looking for is, I know where the master plan currently sits and some action items, and there were actually a couple of administrative planning functions that didn't happen the first time with the master plan, but it's not anything to be concerned about. They just need to happen now. I'm taking care of that. But where this question really arose from was, so I'm very clear on what kind of community engagement that I foresee happening with the master plan once it's reviewed for that 63-day review period. And that involves creating space for it on the website, having hard copies available at some of our community gathering centers, including the library, possibly over here, a special email address where residents can review and provide feedback. But what we're looking for is the background information, and tonight might not be the best spot, it was probably a future report, but of the community engagement efforts that would have happened while the plan was being drafted. What kind of, opportunities did the public have to give their input? And I think it's an important statement. I'll say it for the public. So master plan engagement normally happens in 2 chunks. One is the early days where you're still writing everything down and making your changes, but the most substantial spot for community engagement is after it's released for the 63-day review period. So I would just say to anyone that was hearing this tonight and didn't feel like they had the opportunity to participate, there's a whole area, there's gonna be a whole section of time with a lot of space for residents to go ahead and provide that feedback once it's the appropriate time. What we're kind of curious, especially me being a new administrator, having new council, is and given the length of time that it took us to kind of get to this point, just what were some of the different avenues that the public had to engage while we were coming up? And that might be something great in a follow-up planning report.
Yeah, so we can look at the annual review from, I think, last year when we submitted the master plan.
Okay.
As some of the things that we accomplished. But mostly, come to Planning Commission, it takes us a year or so to actually go through the whole document. It's quite extensive, and so everyone is welcome. What ends up happening, at least as far as how we get it initially started, is that we have two planning commissioners that meet with McKenna, and they talk about what the updates are, what no longer applies, what might apply. We look at, and then we go through cycles for each section as a planning. Fortunately, we have several former planning commissioners that have been through this process before that can help as well, just, as I explained through what we did. But yeah, it takes a long time to go through, and you update it every 5 years, so we're almost due.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we can provide something to help with that.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, now we're going to do our bills. Anybody? Angelina?
The communications for the Bratton House, is that different than the phone and email? Like, what's included in the communications from
That's
AT&T?
from AT&T. It's my understanding those are just our phones. So it includes Dana communications on the bills list it says communications Broughton House. Is that just referring to the telephones? Is it AT&T?
It's, telephones, it's all of the everything that goes behind the communications, whether it's the actual service or it's for like the contracts or for service providers that provide us with communication.
What do you mean by communications, I think is what we're
It's
looking
not
for.
internet.
No.
It's not the telephone lease.
No, but you know how cell phones go, right? You pay for every line, you pay for every voicemail box, you pay for, is that what you're referring to? So this line item, the other thing is we don't own the phones.
No, we actually rent.
Yeah, but that's a separate line item.
Okay, so the communications must be just for our lines here?
It's for the service of the line.
Non-tangible equipment. So this is the service, whereas the telephone leases is the physical telephones from Verve Cloud.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Which we do have a number of lines here. I think that that's often underestimated. There's 6, 7 lines here, but we do use all of them over here.
Okay. And then the Otter AI and Zoom annual subscriptions, we're paying the same company, or why are we paying Dana for those?
Because
she has to put on her credit card
Yeah.
because we don't have a purchase card.
So, and we've made movements on that. I'm just finalizing the policy. I'm not gonna release a credit card without a policy, but again, it's so important that we have that ability for us and for PD, because you'll see a number of things that come up from time to time that we put on our own cards. I think there's even some for Susan today for like the mosquito tabs and stuff. She had put those on her personal card. We have to reimburse her. So June meeting, we'll have a credit card in place. We're close on that. I'm just finalizing
And
the
is
policy.
it like $16 a month then, if I divide it by 2, or it doesn't break out like that?
Or which one?
For Zoom, $16 a month, and Otter AI, $16 a month?
No, Otter is like $12 a month, and Zoom is like $16 a month.
Okay. And then,
And we pay them annually, we don't pay them.
yeah, that's why I was just wondering, because it was coupled together.
Yeah, unfortunately, they came up to do that at the same time.
That's fine, I was just wondering. For the IT support?
Yes.
How are we billed on that? Is it per hour? Because when the guy called me to switch my password, people within the building can change passwords. All of us and the commissioners have to call him. And I asked, I was like, how much is this phone call costing us? And he's like, oh, I'm sure we'll just round up to the nearest half hour. I was like, click. Because I want to know, like, is it per month? Is it per minute?
Depends. It doesn't break down like that. So if it's like a scheduled project, we know we're switching servers, infrastructure, that's like a dollar amount that we're paying over and is estimated. But like as support is needed, they charge us for each ticket.
What is their billable rate?
I'm not sure off the top of my
Okay.
head.
So this goes back to like the procurement active contracts. I know that you're doing the budget, but I think that we just need to figure out like how much we're using, because I don't want, like a 2-minute phone call, like be rounded up, like if you're an
Agreed.
attorney, you charge every 6 minutes, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, I'm getting charged 6 minutes, I'm not getting charged an hour, but like if they're like a 2-minute call rounds up to an hour, then, I'm like, okay, let's merge them all together and have you send, like, here's our issues for the week or something, which would be administrative burden on you.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I don't want a 2-minute call to cause an hour.
I agree. Not happy with that statement. I'm hoping it was made in jest, but I don't know. But I can say that prior to using the current IT services, we had Matt. We had Matt for like 20 years. We were overpaying and under receiving services. It goes out to bid. I'm not with Franklin when that happens. The issue with the contract that we had over here is pretty much nobody wanted to pick it up because we're small. We don't, basically not enough billable monthly hours for the amount of hassle that we are. And for the most part, Gary, who works with an entire team, is been a good fit for us in Franklin. We're able to submit electronic tickets. He does work around our schedules. Like I frequently will not address IT during the workday because I can't have my computer down for an hour, so I'll stay late and call, and Gary will always answer. So I can get more details about the substance of his contract. I can say that it's a massive improvement from what the village had say 4 years ago, and that the last time that it went out to bid, we were really seeing high cost for very low need, and so we went with Gary. But yeah, the 2 minutes charging to 30 minutes, not appropriate. I don't get the impression that that's actually happening, but maybe it is. So I can look at and see how those are structured.
That was it.
Anyone else with questions? All right. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the bills list?
Motion to approve the current bills.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All righty. Old business. So we are now on to our second reading of the proposed amendment to the Village Code, Section 307, regulations dealing with open burning. So this came back, the only change dealt with penalty. So Peter, you want to fill us in on what got
Yes.
added?
So, at the last meeting, I think it was trustee Sally had suggested that there should be some type of fee associated with not pulling a permit, not having a permit approved. So I looked at that and I thought, we could run into trouble considering due process. If you're going to penalize a citizen or give them a reprimand, then they have to have due process, because we were thinking about a staggered tier, as you may recall. So, one way to get around that or address that is to just have a nominal fee for a permit. I threw it in there arbitrarily. You guys can do whatever you want with it, but that's one way to get around it. I didn't feel comfortable with, if somebody does not request a permit, at a second juncture for someone to be penalized for that without due process. There is a civil infraction under section 4, but without due process, I didn't feel comfortable adding that staggered tier.
Is it illegal, or is it just a comfort thing?
I think it would be illegal without due process.
So,
Peter,
what
what's-
what was it that David was proposing, or that you were contemplating that's different than our penalty provision?
There isn't one in here.
What do you mean?
I'm sorry to catch
Say what?
trustee Sully's comments.
There's no penalty in here.
Yeah, section 4.
Section
All violations of this ordinance shall be a municipal civil infraction, and upon termination of responsibility, there shall be a punishable by a fine of not more than $500.
Right.
And other sanctions. So-
So the original ordinance includes that.
Right.
Right.
So what was it that we wanted to?
No, let me, so I think, David, what you're saying is, what is different from, when I see this, do I want to charge somebody $500?
Right.
No, right? That's kind of the point, is, are we going to treat this as severe of a penalty as we're suggesting in here? Are we gonna go through the process of trying to enforce that? Probably not. Heard on the fact that they need due process, but I guess I would have two comments back to that. The first one would be, appreciate the attempt on the permit fee, but that does the opposite. That almost does the opposite of what I wanted, which is, I'm not interested in just collecting the fee for the sake of the fee. It's for not following our ordinances, because we've gotten into a lot of positions where people just go and do whatever they want and say, oh, I forgot to pull a permit. And we always get the feedback, or at least I did with Roger, which was, if they didn't pull a permit, what can we do? And you'd be like, well, the ordinances don't have teeth, right? And so my attempt here was to give it teeth and write into the ordinance a fee that, like, first time, get it, we changed the ordinance, we're changing the way things are done, so we're gonna do a nominal fee, a nominal penalty. And then if it happens again, you're already on notice, so shame on you, we can increase it more, so it's not nominal anymore. But increasing the permit without having penalty just increases the chances that somebody's not gonna get a permit. Potentially, right? And so I'm not interested in charging somebody $10 to do yard waste burning, right? The whole point was to curb not doing the permit or not following the ordinance.
I'll let Mike speak to this, but I think our code enforcement officer usually gives a written warning the first time, and then he may escalate it.
Depends. I think that written warnings typically, as a blanket statement for code enforcement, can be
Yeah.
good, because most of the time with a code enforcement issue warning, you can go fix it. You can go clean out your culvert, you can go, but with burning, one, the code enforcement officer probably isn't even here. It's gonna be fire department, I would assume. And, there really isn't a way for them to go back and correct that behavior. So I would assume that if we were notified of an open burning that occurred without a permit, that the fire department would contact code enforcement the next day. Code enforcement does have the authority to issue a citation, and then would issue the citation. But I hear the point that the citation is hefty. That's,
It says not more than $500.
Right. I mean,
Oh,
we're
okay.
talking about court
Doesn't-
fees.
So
Would
who
it
has
be-
the
what's our-
discretion to set?
Hang on one second,
fee.
just so I can finish this thought, and then we'll move on to other people's opinions on it. But like, my question would be, in that, what's our due process? I'm not sure we have due process set up for that. How do we make sure that the person who is submitting the burn permit on one instance is treated substantially similar to the next one who violates it? Do we have procedures in place? Probably not.
You get a ticket.
Yeah, so the
Of
ticket
what
would be
amount?
the part of the due process, and then go in front of the judge and resolve it that way, right?
What's the
Saying it should
difference?
be, a
like
first
any
offense
civil
should be
infraction.
X amount, second offense should be X
So
amount.
is it, and it comes up civil infraction, up to $500, so we just say, it's a violation, judge assess the fine.
We're gonna send straight to
Correct.
court at the first violation.
Again, yeah, I think a court enforcement officer has flexibility to issue a written warning.
But we're trying
No,
to.
I'm talking, we're past that, we've done a civil infraction, what's the due process? Like, what is the process that somebody goes through at that point?
Then that would be issuing them a civil infraction, and they go in front
You
of.
go to district court.
Right.
With no fine amount?
There would be a fine assessed, I don't know what it would be.
Who assesses the fine?
Court.
Okay, so we just say there's been a civil infraction, we have a document of everything that's happened by the code enforcement officer, and then the person who is guilty of the civil infraction will not know what their penalty is until, this is generally, I don't know the process.
And
Would
we
then
just
go
like
to
a
a judge.
speeding ticket, you don't always know how much your speeding ticket is
You
gonna
do.
be until it goes to court. Not every civil infraction has a dollar
So
amount on it.
You're suggesting a schedule of fines then, which.
Yeah, I'm just, I am, like, my first point was, don't think the permit fee's necessary because it's not accomplishing the thing I wanted. The second part is, what are we doing for ordinance violations? Like, generally, how are we, if somebody does not comply, right? And we don't get them to come into compliance, how are we
Issue a
treating
ticket.
it?
So the first, I mean, I come in every day and read a bunch of, I mean, this is a general conversation about code enforcement we're getting into right now.
Yeah.
I come in every day, I have a stack of warning letters of first violators of code enforcement issues. Those then get delivered. They all have time frames or an action item. If they're not handled, then tickets are issued.
But we're not collecting any of the money, and we
No.
talked about using for code violations as a revenue source.
So I can see that, but I think, and that's a legal question beyond me, right? But Peter is saying that just by enforcing the fines without going through court eliminates one's due process.
Yeah.
Correct, or some type of due process, some type of due process hearing. Now, I'd have to take a look, but I think we're aligned with Southfield District Court. So Southfield District Court should be paying us for certain fees. The court collects its portion of fees, but they should submit, however nominal it is, because we're a small community, but they should be submitting fees to us.
They do. There is a
And
small,
we pay a lawyer to
Yep.
go and represent.
Yep.
That's what Alan Glass
Yeah,
does.
yeah, correct.
It's no different than when you get a ticket. Now, David's correct, on the back of a ticket, there's all the different fines associated with it. So,
They're negotiated, but yeah, I mean, when you go in for a speeding ticket, sometimes you
Right.
can get impeding or whatnot, and it's a different fee structure.
But
And
that-
the court assesses, go ahead, Mike.
I'm, again, just generally trying to understand, like, on the ticket, it typically says the amount, and then the judge has discretion from there to deviate from it, right? Whereas it's like, all right, I've just been issued a civil infraction for not pulling, we'll just go into this hypothetical, not pulling a permit on my burn ban. I don't know if that means $15 or $500, right? Like, that's where it just, to me, is a little bit like, let alone the fact that, again, I raised this previously to Roger, and he told me that there's no teeth to not pulling a permit, which seems incorrect.
I would say that's absolutely incorrect, because if I was notified by code enforcement, hey, we talked to the fire department, there was open burning, this has happened before, we gave a warning, they did it again, I would absolutely instruct to go issue a civil infraction over there. I mean, they would be to the court to decide whether or not, you know, that Franklin had enough teeth, but at that point, like, absolutely things need to be enforced. Now, the first step isn't a civil infraction. It's normally a warning letter. We want to work with our residents. A lot of people don't even know they're violating code until they do. But the moment that the moment that we've given a warning and it continues to happen, absolutely a civil infraction should be issued.
Thank you.
Angelina?
Yeah, so is it then prohibited from that communities not institute a fee schedule for violations? Like, is that illegal?
Are you saying, should we set the fee structure? Is that,
No, like the fee structure that we had voted on last meeting, where it was going to be a tiered fee structure based on number of violations, is that illegal? Like, no communities do that?
no, I think you can set that. I don't know that you guys voted on a fee structure that I recall.
No, we didn't vote on anything, right? It was just, we were,
But we asked to.
that's something that we sent back. I think
To have
what,
you include it.
the
But-
question, sorry.
No, just no communities can enforce a tiered fee structure based on violations, according to the law.
Without due process, correct.
Yeah, so how do communities institute due process in that instance?
Whether it's through district court,
Mhm.
it's issuing civil infractions or misdemeanors or whatnot, that's typically how it's held. I don't handle the prosecutions, but I can look into it and
So
report back.
wouldn't it be the same? Like, they both end up in district court.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we have already on the books, and that's what the original ordinance has.
So how would the tiered fee structure obfuscate that due to?
Okay, are we talking
due
tiered
process?
fee structure or tiered penalty
Tiered
structure?
penalty structure. How would that not allow due process? It's just,
No, they have to have due process, so you can have the, I think, fee structure, I'd have to report back, but I thought my instructions were that we would institute all of that, where we would say, such and such citizen, this is your second time not pulling a permit, we're issuing a $150 fee, for example, okay? That, I don't think you have due process, so it's a penalty. My recommendation is having the district court handle it.
So just, sorry.
I guess the question that they're concerned with is, where is the bar gonna get set on the person who gets a ticket for their first violation of an open burn, and the code enforcement's been there once, and they did it again, so it's now a second time, and it's been determined that a civil infraction should be issued. And the judge is the one that makes the ultimate decision. Is there some level of guidance that we should have in place, whether it's for an open burn or a multitude of violations, which is sort of like a penalty structure, because it says up to $500, is up to 500, I would assume, based on number of offenses. Somebody who is a regular offender, the judge sees more often, they would be more inclined to go to the higher end of his or her discretion. So is it a discretionary thing? Like, that's, I guess, the question that
Okay,
they're
thank you.
wondering. Is it something discretionary, or does our prosecutor go in and say, as part of the whole thing, I want, we're looking for a fine? Because that would seem a little arbitrary if just, based on how our prosecutor felt that day.
Yes, so typically a prosecutor negotiates that with a defendant or a criminal defendant.
Ahead of time.
Or a defendant's attorney, ahead of time.
Yep.
And they look to see how many times has this occurred, right? And the more you've done it, the harsher the penalty should be.
Right, and then no resolution's met, it goes to the judge, there's a simple little, whatever, trial, whatever you wanna call it, a hearing, and the judge says, no, you violated this, and I'm issuing you a fine. Are we just leaving it to the judge to say, I guess I don't think any of us have really studied, and maybe that's a good exercise, is the village code section, I flipped away, 220, whatever it is that deals with code violations. That should be where the whole process is laid out, and
The 202.99.
is that where you,
Yeah, I think that's where the penalty section is. That's an Alan Glass question, I can ask him. But, usually for civil infractions, it depends on the speeding and 1 to 5 and 5 to 10 and whatnot. But for this instance, I'd have to ask Alan Glass.
Okay, because I remember we've had a prior discussion, and it might have been me listening in on a planning commission discussion on subjects of this, where instead of writing the actual number in the ordinance, so then if you change it, you've got to amend an ordinance that all the ordinance should be amended to refer to a penalty schedule.
Yeah.
And then the schedule is something we control by resolution, and then that schedule covers everything, open burning.
I thought that's what we discussed
Yeah,
last
last-
month.
It is what we discussed, so that's what we
Well-
wanted to get to on a global thing, but we're dealing with the open burn ordinance right now. And if we're not comfortable with the penalty language, then we should hold off on this.
What I would say is that a fee schedule is
Penalty
different
Penalty
than
schedule.
a penalty schedule that is correlated to a civil infraction would not be set by this office. A fee schedule is still relevant. What you're describing is still relevant. You know, the fees for permits shouldn't be listed in ordinances. It should say, see annual report. Now, we do enforce penalties that we set the cost for on expired building permits, because those aren't civil infractions, so that would be something on a fee schedule. So it's not that the fee schedule wouldn't have any penalties, but if the correct me if I'm wrong, if the penalty relates to a civil infraction or a misdemeanor, those fees are set by the court.
Yes, for most of them that I know of. For this specific one, I'd have to check with Alan Glass.
Yeah, because the misdemeanor, of course, is set by the court, because I think that's state, right? But here, like a civil infraction, we could be talking about a parking ticket, right?
Yeah, but
So
we don't set that. The village doesn't set the rate for the parking ticket.
local communities don't, it's set across the board.
I think it all depends on the community. Like, I think
Well-
Birmingham is.
Well, that's precisely my point, right? If it's set by the community, that's our authority.
Yeah, let me check with Alan Glass.
Yeah, and I think to David's point, I think we can take action on this and then address the more global issue, which is what I had. It wasn't specific to burn permit, it's just what brought it up, which is how do we start to put teeth into our ordinances?
Yeah, I think we all agree with that.
Yeah.
I've got a question about
Well,
schooling
let's see if we're still-
How is the penalty not gonna be treated like a permit fee after the fact?
Well, the penalty is, you
I
could have
know.
done it for free if you'd have just followed the rules, but if you choose not to follow the rules, you're gonna pay.
But if you go beyond the what the ordinance allows, you still can get a penalty, right? So if you decide to have a 12-foot fire as a bonfire, and
Even if you-
that's just, you're just paying for a permit by paying a penalty.
Well, not really.
No, I mean, some communities make you pay for a permit just to do it. We've never used that as a revenue source.
I see it the same, but your analogy is the exact same thing as a parking ticket. If I drive up to a parking meter and I say, I don't wanna pay for it, and I come back and I have a $15 ticket, I took a gamble and I lost.
Yeah, but you
So
pay
it's the
for you
same
pay for a
thing.
$15 parking spot.
It's the same thing.
Right, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, this is
same
already
thing there.
codified, right? This is already being done by most communities regarding
You
civil
could have done it for
infractions.
free, but you didn't, now you're gonna pay $250 because you
Right.
didn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not much different than the person that's paying for their yard, their property to be cleared and going through having someone actually come in and do it professionally, right? But but this individual's not doing, the individual that would be getting the penalty wouldn't necessarily be doing it professionally and going through that route. I'm just saying that you guys are talking about teeth, and so this is a problem with all of our ordinances, is people don't often, with a nominal fee of $500, that's just part of doing business sometimes, depending on what it is. So they may have filled out a permit, they decide to do whatever they want. The $500 is like, that's the fee to do it. So when you're talking about the teeth for ordinances, keep that in mind though, when we set a cap of $500, is there enough teeth to actually, like, is that just a mosquito bite or is that actually a chunk out of your arm? So
On a
that's the point I was making.
On a similar topic, we ought to have permit fees that are permit fees. We charge $1 for estate sales in this village.
Yeah.
I'm in that business, and in Birmingham and Bloomfield, it's $100. It's, and I laugh about it, you know. I've said when Andy comes in here, tell him it's $1,000, and I said so. It's ridiculous, the paperwork.
Well,
So if we're gonna
again,
have permit
if
fees,
you
we
wanna
should have.
refer to the planning commission to start looking into,
Or just
a
to
permit
Make it work.
fee process.
Non-building permit
Yeah,
fees,
of course,
because.
obviously not the building
Yep.
department,
No.
but I mean, there's all the various ordinances that we have. If there's areas where somebody has to come and ask for permission to do something, if we want to consider a charge, then I guess we would start at the planning level and have them find the various ordinances where it's applicable and then consider it. And the same thing if we want to have an infraction schedule. First infraction on any ordinance is blank, blank, blank. First, second, third. But, well, Pam, did you have, you were
I
trying
had
to
a
get.
question, yeah, regarding section 307.3. There's
Can you
a
scroll the screen?
307.3.1. There's a permit fee. So, we're gonna charge $10 for a burn permit?
I threw that in there, please. You can
That's
hit
what
this
you were
one. Yeah,
talking about at the
yeah.
front end, okay. Because if council supports that, then then we're gonna need to figure out a way for people to pay when they take out a permit. That means we have to install some kind of payment
Correct, 'cause
process
this is an online
by
form.
click. So I think there's two issues. One is, should we start doing that? If so, how are we going to do that? And do we really want to go down that road?
And shouldn't it be permit fee per the schedule and not have the
Yeah.
actual number in
Yes.
here?
For sure.
Because we discussed last time.
If we were gonna incorporate this, then yes, we would suggest changing that language.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that,
Yeah, please.
I would be opposed to charging a fee. I think we want to encourage people to apply for the permits. We want the fire department to have notice when something was going on, and if you start charging people, they're not going to want to apply in the first place.
No, I'm much rather having a stiffer penalty for those who choose not to just pick up their mouse and click, click, click and let the fire department know what's going on.
I agree with trustee Ferris.
Yeah, I'm. So, we're gonna try and move this forward. General consensus on keeping the fine language in, or the permit language in.
I'll make a motion to adopt subject to striking 307.3.1, which is the permit language.
So just to clarify, David, you're suggesting the second reading of the ordinance with that suggested change?
Correct.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I'm gonna abstain from the vote. I'm gonna do a vote.
Abstain, why?
Because I don't fully understand the due process issue with the tiered.
Then vote no. I mean, I don't know if we can just abstain. on voting.
You told me a couple meetings ago I could abstain.
Me?
Instead of voting no. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Yeah, I
say.
can abstain according to parliamentary procedure,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
But he can
Not sure what
also
that
ask you
means.
why, so.
Oh, yeah, because
ask
I
and
don't
answer,
fully
yeah.
understand, yeah.
Yeah. fair
Okay.
enough.
All right, Baranek, so we have a new ordinance. I guess go through the process of whether it has to be done with publishing and then also a mayor legal.
So that brings up a good point. So we're doing a full codification. We started this year, moving into the next year. There's a lot of ordinances that need to be looked at. In the meantime, before submitting this to AmeriLegal, paying that fee, and then having to redo it in like 2 months, 3 months when Peter and I get the rest, what I've been doing when we have ordinances, just so residents are aware, is you go to our website, right where you would pull everything else, and it'll be pulled out. The only other one I have right now that isn't in there that I'm aware of is the lighting ordinance, so it'll have its own link to click on.
And then the fire department has a copy of actually 2 ordinances ago for the burn permit, so that you read through when you get the permit. So when this gets updated, please, can we have the fire department's webpage updated as well?
We're not affiliated with the fire department's website,
think we're-
but I will make sure they get a good copy of the updated one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Meg. Okay.
Before we move on, I had a
Yeah.
question too. I think under the new business, it's listed under F as the infrastructure committee priorities, but I think we have some members of the community who are here for that item, so I was wondering if we might consider moving that up to the top of new business.
Wireless roam. I don't generally have a problem. We're just doing a discussion, so what is it that are we going through what you sent around today, Meg? as far
I
as
didn't
discuss-
send anything. I responded to
Oh,
some
did
questions
anything
from
go
the
around today? So what
infrastructure
is,
committee.
so we have an infrastructure committee priorities that got added, so Angelina.
And I
Dan.
put the photos that were submitted into a PowerPoint. So Dana, please pull that up if we're
Right, so are we
gonna have
gonna,
that
are we
discussion.
gonna be okay, everybody, moving that up so that if we have residents that wanted to participate, I
Sure.
don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so who wants to, who put this together? Who wants to explain to us what we're?
I can put it
looking
together, it's actually, I did that.
at? Okay,
So,
could you tell us who you are?
oh, Rebecca Bemis. I'm on Wing Lake Road in Franklin. And basically, we just have a corner. Pam is my neighbor too, and she can probably attest that around this corner, there is like zero visibility from two angles, going southbound and going westbound. And I have more pictures too. And you can see, well, I'll get to that when we get to that. There's a lot of speeding cars that go through because it's a very straight street and people just like pick up speed. And we have a lot of, you know, pedestrians, children, dogs, bicyclists, a lot of things going on. And I just like worry that at some point somebody's going to get taken out by a vehicle. So we do already involve the village in this. Every summer, there's a point where it gets so overgrown that we do contact the village and they come out and help manage the foliage there. The people that live there are just older, and so I don't think that they have really the ability to like go crazy with a chainsaw or anything. So we do have the village help, and that seems to be useful, but it doesn't really resolve some of the issues. So is it like, can you back it up? Is it, I think it's zoomed in.
Who's got?
I'm also confused because there was an entire infrastructure report.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
can we?
Oh,
can
I didn't
we
know if that
pause and get back kind of to that? I don't want the committees. We need direction on a number of issues. I'm confused on how this is exactly fitting into that.
So we had sent Meg like 2 weeks ago our priorities and in order to move them forward, it got added to the agenda so that way the entire council can.
But I didn't attach a report or anything. I responded to you guys' request, and Chief Annette Lawson and I have both spoken to the road commission and gotten some quotes, but I believe that you were gonna share that report with the rest of council, or?
You want me to share the,
I'm not involved in a committee's work until it has a consensus from council. So I definitely assisted in getting some of the requested information, but I'm not taking leadership on this project until council's given me that direction.
okay, so the infrastructure committee has been focused on two things, safety and connectivity.
Okay.
So, Dan, Abby, and I, had like 9 items that we wanted to address, but most of them, actually all of them probably relate to safety and connectivity.
Definitely.
So we sent them to Meg so she could facilitate some meetings with the Oakland County Road Commission and Chief. And some of them are within our sphere of control, like stop signs that are solely in Franklin boundaries and crosswalks to some of the comments. And others are going to be, require involvement and partnership with Oakland County Road Commission.
Okay.
The guidance was Oakland County Road Commission needs council's direction, and we need to vote that this council wants to pursue this before the road commission will come in and really have not a meaningful, but really they want to see that the council's prioritizing this in order to meet with Meg and give her more face time, right?
Yeah, so I can elaborate on that. So I'm given like 9 issues. We need to go through those one by one and see where the consensus is. I was able to get the max amount of information that the road commission is willing to provide resources for before there's general consensus. First one, do you want me to just read through them? Okay, first one. So these came not from a meeting with me, it was a meeting with the infrastructure committee. Then I was given an email about 9 items. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I think that it's a good example moving forward. We need to draw better boundaries as a council as to where things move from a committee to the administrator, because just like with the Green Committee, we don't want staff spending time on priorities that haven't been vetted by council as a whole. So the first one was a crosswalk on 13 Mile. This comes up a lot. It's 100% a road commission activity. They are only willing to install crosswalks in areas where there's connectivity, meaning that they would already need the existing sidewalks to put in the crosswalk there. So we know a sidewalk on 13 Mile on the south side is 5 to 6 million, and we know the sidewalk on the north side is 1 to 3 million, and we would be responsible for those costs. The next one is warning signals. Do you have your report on where those were? These are just my
Yeah,
notes.
so, real quick, with the sidewalk and the crossing, if we address them that due to the 696 closure and the fact that a sidewalk installation will take 2 years, would they be willing to review a crosswalk proposal without sidewalks?
Probably not, no, because it's gonna go against, I mean, I can ask, but it's gonna go against their entire precedent that they have for putting in these kind of traffic
Well,
engineering.
I thought it said you could go from a street to a street.
Only residential,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like Cheviot Hills to Briarcliff?
That one's different. Let's just move down the list because there were other, this is really disorganized.
Can I ask a question before we spend a lot of time on this? Has Chief Lawson looked at any
Yes.
of this?
Yeah, Chief Lawson and I have
Does Chief
spent-
have any recommendations?
I can get to
Guys,
those.
Time out. We added this to the agenda just as a discussion item, so we're not taking any action
Yeah.
tonight on anything. All
Right.
we're doing is getting this from what was added, presented to us after legal committee had already met on Monday, and our meeting on this Monday was when the infrastructure committee supplied this. So I would prefer that we just hear out what everything is, what the like you were doing, what the proposed crosswalks are, what the proposed stop sign areas are, any other proposed things, and then if we could get something tangible in our hands like that, and whatever written report came with it, then everybody could have a chance to digest it and bring it back.
It is difficult for me to know how to proceed when this very similar issue was just brought up about the green and assessing staff time and resources towards something that wasn't sanctioned by a committee and by council as a full, and now I have it coming through again. And so,
Is the difference that we're a sanctioned council committee, where the green?
no, because these are not council priorities. The committee needs to bring forward exactly what you did here to your council and get consensus and say, chase that one, chase this one, chase that one, and then we can.
Okay, real quick though, let me ask this question. Hang on, I'm talking. There's a significant difference here because, like, what I guess would be.
'Cause I wasn't even involved in this
Hold up,
meeting.
Meg. Hold up. What I think is fruitful for this conversation is how do they come and present this to council, right? Let's keep the conversation at that so it's productive, which is absolutely a committee can bring things to council. But how do they do that?
I think-
Right? Without saying, Meg do this, Susan do this, Dana do this, right? Because I have no problem going, crosswalk on 13 Mile, sounds great. Like, I absolutely would vote in favor for you to go and pursue that, right? But they need to have a meaningful forum to be able to present it. So they're on this, they're currently on the agenda, which seems to me the appropriate time for you guys to walk through your priorities.
100%. And so I did my part at providing the background information and doing that. But the infrastructure committee should have a report to give to you or be able to walk you through their ideas and get your consensus on that. I agree with that.
So should we take votes today?
No.
I'm gonna ask the president.
I think the infrastructure committee should take the information that I gathered based on ideas that they had in their brainstorm and put together a report to give to council. And then talk to council as a whole about that and then have consensus on what the main priorities from that list are.
And send it to us so we can read it before the meeting.
Well, it does have to go through staff though.
That's okay, you could send it through us. I'm just saying the difference is me preparing a full report, right?
Right. We have a process, okay? Things get on the agenda through the legal committee. So typically, if a committee of any of our committees has something they'd like to find its way to the agenda, it would start with legal committee. Legal committee met on Monday, and this wasn't presented to us. We were asked, after the fact, if we would add it to the agenda for discussion, not consideration, just for discussion. So we added it to the agenda at your guys' request. So what I'm asking you is, what do you want to present to us? You have a PowerPoint here, and I'm assuming the PowerPoint has something written that goes with it. So it would have been helpful if we'd have had the written thing in front of us, but if you don't, if somebody could at least read it to us as you go through each of these specific areas in the village that are being identified for concern, and if as a general, not saying yay or nay on all of them, but if in general, enough of them pique enough interest of a majority of us up here, then somebody can make a motion to then engage the staff to go do various things in order to bring it back more substantive. You guys had issues about engaging staff before council had taken asked it to be done for the green project, so now we're bringing it here, let's discuss it, run it by us. If there's enough in there that a majority of us feels tangible, I mean, there's already 3 of you of the 4 of us on the subcommittee, so if you guys feel that the rest, 1 more of us feel that's enough to move it on to staff, then let's do that. So just run it by us, and we shouldn't have to force a resident to be in the uncomfortable position of explaining to us. If a resident has a concern on one of these specific items, I'd probably rather wait for that discussion to occur when we're bringing it back to council with something more tangible. I thought the purpose of this, when this got asked to go on the agenda, was enough information for us to make a decision to engage the staff to research it. Meg, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree with that. And I think that, so the infrastructure committee did a great job at brainstorming some ideas, but I also wasn't included in that meeting, but that's fair. It's a time constraint thing, so I appreciate that. What Chief Lawson and I did was talk to the road commission to give the infrastructure committee some more information, because when you have that information, a few of these ideas are just not on the table right now. Like they're either things that the road commission's not gonna enforce, or they're cost-wise. But I think that at this point, what we need is for the infrastructure committee to present their ideas and to find consensus with council, so we can say, yes, these are goals, staff, now let's start moving. And if you put the cart before the horse with the road commission, they're gonna put up their elbows. We have to have our ducks in line when we call those meetings. Now, they were very amicable at talking informally with Chief Lawson and I on separate occasions to give us some talking points, which we provided to the infrastructure committee. But this isn't an administrative report.
And just real quickly, the reason why we came together first and sent to Meg was we were told that we weren't allowed to facilitate meetings with the chief or the road commission unless it went through Meg.
Which is true.
Exactly, so that was the process that we were told to follow, so.
But you just need council consensus.
Yeah, so that's what we're here to do.
Right, and everything that's being proposed isn't just in the jurisdiction of the road commission. That's only 13 Mile. What these ladies
Well,
are interested in are completely in our
Kind
purview.
of, but, we were proposing, stop signs are within ours,
Right.
except there are 2 proposed that are in my notes that the road commission does not support. 3 of them, they have no objection to, but there were things like changing the speed limit. And so I outlined what it costs to change the speed limit and how that the road commission's not gonna lower the speed limit on 13 Mile. I mean, I went through that. If you want me to continue to read down these priorities, we can do that. Okay, crosswalks, so we talked about that. Warning signals, these are just my notes, but the warning signal light, the first thing is that a warning light is not enforceable. And it's only allowed on roads with speed limits of 40 miles or less. So we were looking at possibly getting a warning, like a safety warning light on 13 Mile, but that can't happen because the speed limit is 45 miles per hour. A hawk system, and this information's coming from the road commission, just so everybody's clear. This isn't my information. I called, so did Chief Lawson, to talk to Alex at the road commission. Next, a hawk system, which is a high-intensity activated crosswalk. It is enforceable, but the cost is about $200,000 plus $20,000 for in design, planning, and implementation. And it does require an electrical installation. the village would be responsible for that cost, and the road commission just cautioned that they do see that they get complaints from neighbors for the brightness. But there were additional considerations they had, like a potential right-of-way. Oh, and we had additional considerations, like the cost to procure right-of-ways. And again, they wanted the village to know that we would be responsible for 100% of those costs. Left turn signals on 13 Mile in Franklin, because anyone that turns out knows that that's a really difficult spot. So the road commission said that they've reviewed this request multiple times over the last several years. And that in order to do that, they would require a dedicated center turn lane on 13 Mile. It would require possible property acquisition, so easements from the homeowners on the north side. But that we should also consider maybe a roundabout there, but that the village would need to contribute.
Can you explain that one again? A left turn lane, I'm
I
not,
think
I'm
it'd
not
be
following.
the 13 in Franklin Road, because that's the one that everybody's always like,
Yeah.
this is not safe.
And that the road commission, if we
You're
could
talking
get.
about this, when you're going southbound on Franklin and you want to turn left onto 13 Mile.
Yes.
The weird
I think-
configuration.
The north-south turn, right?
Yeah.
So you're going east-west and you want to turn north-south. It's a giant blind spot.
Yeah.
So the road commission isn't necessarily opposed to that, but they do want us to know that they've reviewed this request multiple times and they haven't approved it. And that in order to do so, we would either need to install a roundabout or a dedicated center turn lane, and that there's heavy costs associated with that. The next request from the infrastructure committee was a speed limit reduction on 13 Mile. So the road commission says that to change speed limits, they follow the 85th percentile rule, which limits speed limits based at or below the rate of which 85% of the vehicles travel. So Alex was very careful with this. He said, this isn't in accordance with the Michigan Motor Vehicle Law, but what it actually means, and they advise against requesting this because they'll come out at our cost and do a speed study, which is about $20,000. But if they find that more than 85% of the vehicles are traveling faster than 45 miles per hour, then they'll actually raise the speed limit. They won't lower it. And he said that in all his time with the road commission, he could not recall a speed limit ever being reduced under this process. So that might not be something that we want to pursue. Now, here's the one that was more in our jurisdiction without the county, and that was regards to stop signs. There were a number proposed. One at Suzanne and Wing Lake Drive. There was no objection by the road commission for that. At Wellington and Normandy, no objection by the road commission. Wellington and Brandingham, no objection by the road commission. Now, Woodlore and Franklin, it was requested to look into an enhanced pedestrian crosswalk. So the road commission said that that would have to be confirmed with a traffic study, and just to clarify, traffic studies between $10,000 and $15,000, we would pay for that. Crosswalk at Franklin and Greenbrier, and it's due to, so the road commission's notes on that were, due to the sharp curve approaching from the north, a professional safety assessment is recommended before considering a crosswalk there. Again, the cost for that would be $10,000 to $15,000.
Crosswalk at the turn?
At Franklin and Greenbrier.
South of 13 Mile.
I don't know where the intersection is, but so you're talking about proposing a crosswalk at the curve, and then you want to study on the dangers of that.
I'm not talking about anything.
But that's the
Greenbrier
location.
south of 13
That's
Mile.
a infrastructure. I haven't even met with the infrastructure
So you're
commission. I
talking about
don't
South
know.
Greenbrier, not North Greenbrier. North Greenbrier is right at the curve.
Yeah, so then South Greenbrier.
Yeah, you do South Greenbrier to
Yeah.
10:30.
Okay.
So we had about 5 items that were separate there. Most of those involve the county, but the stop signs really don't. Those are areas that we can talk about in Franklin. The ones that involve the county, with the information I provided, show huge cost associations, and that's why you would need a council to identify those as priorities and try and fund them.
Okay. Chief, you want to add anything?
Just to clarify one thing, and it's my fault when I communicated with Meg, was the stop signs and the crosswalks that were within Franklin, something that I went out and looked at myself. So where she talked about there was no objection, that was from me, that I didn't have any concerns. But I did have concerns at Woodlore and Franklin. I wasn't comfortable making that decision myself, or at Franklin and Greenbrier, because there's quite the curve if you look at Franklin, and I'm not sure how someone's gonna actually see that there's a crosswalk there before they're on top of the crosswalk. So, we'd have to kind of have maybe more of a professional view of if that was something prudent to do.
Okay.
Question?
When we've done
Mike, hold on.
speed.
Mike, let Pam go first. Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Just a point of clarification to Meg and Chief. I believe Franklin owns Franklin Road. I also believe, check me out on this, that we own Franklin Road down to the village limits, which is down at 12.5 mile. I'm questioning the position of the road commission on any involvement
No,
whatsoever.
She misspoke. She misspoke.
You did?
Yes.
Oh, I missed
Chief just
that.
clarified that it was his recommendation.
Yeah, the
Oh, it
stop
was his.
sign.
That's what you
Yeah.
were referring
Yeah.
to? Fine, good.
Yeah.
So, and my only other comment was, these issues came up when we were designing the streetscape.
Oh, okay.
And in the first place, and there were two constraints. One is what the budget would allow, and the second one was the hassle factor. Things got really complicated south of 13 Mile and at the 14 Mile intersection. In both cases, and 14 Mile, we walked away from a crosswalk because of the expense, and the county had some requirements that we didn't feel we wanted to meet. The south, and we left anything below 13 Mile to this discussion, so we could gather all of the complications and try to understand everything all at once, so we could have a good planful discussion about it. I'm delighted that you guys are talking about this. I think it's a necessary conversation, but it has to do with that whole moving people along 13 Mile Road and up and down Franklin Road. So I don't know how we're gonna figure it out, but I really would love to see it continue with the council.
Yeah, so, Meg, I think you and I are saying the same thing, by the way. So I want to start with commending both Meg and Chief for your work on this. I do think, and just, this is where we're speaking the exact same thing. I don't want either of you to have to go through and do the research until we have a vote of what the priorities are. So like, for me personally, the 9 items and all the information just completely overwhelmed me. I didn't digest much of it. And so what my recommendation would be, and again, same thing, like this is a newly formed committee. And so again, I think it's great to give everybody a little bit of grace as far as, yes, we can always improve. So let's focus on what the improvements are. And so my recommendation would be, rather than having all of kind of the additional context, which is absolutely helpful, but the way that I think we can actually digest this and move forward is, what are the 9 things that were asked for? And let's take a vote on those 9 things. And then of those things that are actually approved as far as like what we're interested in learning more on, you can attach the additional learnings that you had and have the time to attach those additional learnings. And then that gives the committee additional time, their next step of like, okay, we have this additional information. What are some things that we can start to think about? Like, for instance, the example was, I think the recommendation of Greenbrier to North Greenbrier, I believe you said was a recommendation for a safety study. If they moved it down to Kim Cardine in South Greenbrier, would they have the same concern? So that gives the next step for that committee to move forward with. So that's personally how I would like to go about it, because again, I think understanding what the 9 items are and taking a vote on that is a lot easier than trying to contextualize everything around it.
Agreed completely, and I think that like just, not even just infrastructure committee, in this case, when there's work going on that is outside of like the preview of, like the consensus of council or with the administrator, it's a perfect time. Ask me to throw it on the agenda, that's great, and like get some solid information so we kind of know what we're talking about, also fine. But then I think that the point of order would be that a designated member from that committee presents what they have identified as their 9 priorities and allow council then to digest and pick which ones we're gonna go after. After that point, then I have consensus from council. Now we can start running. We can start setting up meetings. We can start, doing further research. Having staff spend a bunch of time on ideas that we don't even know are gonna make it through the first step of council is really counterproductive for our time and is confusing. I apologize, this whole process right now is confusing. So I think what might be great is if the infrastructure committee, maybe like using collaboratively some of the information I provided and some of those ideas, puts together a report to present to council to pick priorities from.
Mike?
I think the spirit of this is excellent, and I do commend the committee for doing this. But in fairness, I would like to read the specificity of all of this before we spend a whole lot of time here and be able to grasp and understand these 9 specific areas of concern. And just like some have said, we don't have enough time by the receipt of our schedule of a future council meeting to the council meeting, sitting here tonight to try to digest 9 particular locations is, I think, more time consuming. Secondly, and equally as important, speeding issues in the village have been ongoing forever. A couple years ago, Bethany Reyes came to us and made a presentation about speeding on Franklin Park Drive near their bus stop. I took it upon myself to go over there every day and stand with the constituents who were waiting for the bus to come to see if I could report back to council. I was able to convince Chief Roberts, who was adamant about not putting another stop sign in, to put up a speed, the sign that we have with the
Speed meter.
Yeah, the speed meter. And after 2 weeks of study, it was determined there was no particular speeding issue on that street, and that issue was just sort of put to bed, but we did the best we could. I would encourage us to look at that as an option on your street if you have an issue on Suzanne and wherever you have an issue. We could certainly talk to Chief about moving that and helping try to reduce the speeding on that particular street, just as we do on Wellington and on Scenic Drive and on numbers of places where we find that to be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, the way I presented it is very rudimentary, so I apologize. I just had been talking to Angelina about this issue, and as the foliage grows back in the summer, it becomes more problematic, so I thought it was time to do something about it. The speeding, I just kind of wrote random things that were problematic on various pictures, but there has actually been car accidents at this particular intersection as well. And as far as I know, all the people live in the neighborhood that have had the car accidents. They come around the corner and they go into the ditches, and then they have to get pulled out by like flatbed tow trucks. So there have been multiple.
Well, we would have a record of all of that if that's true. and
Not
I'm
everyone
saying
calls
it's
the
not.
police. I have called the police one time, so there's definitely a record from the time I witnessed one and called. My neighbor wasn't very happy about that, but I thought someone was injured, so I called because they went straight in. It's pretty deep ditch on both sides.
And
Pam.
it's wet, too.
It's wet, and it's also there's a river on both sides. Yeah, so
Is
it's
this
like
a winter problem or is it a year-round problem?
It's a year-round problem because even when the leaves are not on the branches, it is very densely wooded there. So if you go to the next, I mean, I'll just do it really quick. But it's like this the whole way through, and then cars will turn at full speed into the oncoming traffic lane. So if you're walking right here.
Yeah, go to slide 4 real quick.
If
That's
you're
going to show you
walking,
the blind spot, because I'm guessing that stop sign is
This
not
is
there.
the blind spot. This is Suzanne. Wing Lake is the long one.
Okay.
Yep. And turning right, there is a stop sign there, and people do stop at it. But if you are turning left, as you can see, like tire tracks do, people will come right there where there's a car. and like almost get in car accidents. Or if, God forbid, you're walking your dog, you will have to like run because you could get, if you hear a car coming, you have to just run for it because someone will take you out. So my kids, we live right there. So my kids know when you get to this part of the street, you run and go to the other side and like stop and wait.
Listen, we who
So we're
walk-
like, yeah.
we who walk the community know a lot of this and
Oh, yeah.
report this to
In many
Mobile Watch.
areas, I'm sure, yeah.
I'm sure that we can be specific about that kind of a problem and address it. And,
Yeah.
and I know we're committed to that.
Yeah.
As for the rest of this, I would just say, give us the opportunity to read your report
Yes.
prior to next month's meeting, and then we can vote, in
So-
my opinion, on action.
Yes.
Guys, time out. So, just to address this particular intersection, this goes on, this addresses all of the intersections in the village, and that this is certainly something where, if we're gonna have our code enforcement officer be a little proactive. State law, village law, there's a 25-foot clear vision triangle at every intersection. 25 feet this way, 25 feet that way, connect the two lines. That triangle needs to be clear. Nothing should be higher than basically your waist. So if we have intersections see, the problem we have here is that whole clear vision triangle is probably in our right of way. So we could be asking residents to do that, or we should be going around proactively. Now, if we want to notify residents and say, hey, your corner is the clear vision triangle, which isn't being satisfied, and we can give them an opportunity to do it how they would like to do it. If not, then we're gonna come and do it. But that could definitely be a project, because whether it's one of these lists, one of the stop signs that is being suggested is at Brandingham, which is just a few feet from the one being proposed at Normandy, and then just a few feet from the one that already exists at either Carroll or Carroll. So, I drive that 20 times a day. And yeah, typically when you walk, you would recommend to people to walk on oncoming traffic. But when you get to that corner, you cross over and you let traffic come behind you because you don't want to be, but theoretically, that whole stretch is right away with bushes that are grown up to the road. We should be clearing that. Now, I know there were councils ahead of us where they felt that that's, sacred land and that they're not trees, they're weeds. And I have no problem if we want to consider a program where we start properly maintaining our right-of-ways for specific dangerous visionary issues when we already have a law in place that requires it. So this intersection, whether it needs a stop sign or not, could certainly be determined, but the concern of this, what we're staring at, a clear blind spot, is clearly that vision triangle and the whole reason for the clear vision triangle at state law level. So, just a point of order. I'm not suggesting not considering all of these things. All I'm saying is that's something that we should consider as a village, and getting Jerry engaged in might cost $1.
Yep.
But that's public safety at its finest.
I agree 100%. When we had these strategic goal special meetings, these are the type of things that we need to identify because these things need to be budgeted for. Like, I agree that whether or not it's in the right of way, why can't the village pay to have these areas cleaned out? But I need that direction from council. I need it set in priorities so that I can budget to increase, the scope of work to include all these visibility triangles or those type of things.
I would argue it should be proactive, though. I mean, I hear you and I understand what you're saying.
Well, that's not how our ordinance is written. So if we want, if we want to absorb the responsibility for keeping that clear, then I need direction from council to do that because it's in contradiction.
Technically, our ordinances say that even though it's public right of way, it's your responsibility to maintain it if it's in front of your property. Just like you have to maintain your ditch even though the ditch is in the public right of way.
Yep.
So this theoretically falls under that same category. So it could start with letter to said homeowner.
Yep.
You need to take care of this. If they don't, then we move into everything we just talked about is the whole code enforcement aspect of the village.
Or we identify it as a priority and we make a
then we do it.
plan and we circle those out and say, we're gonna add this into our DPW contract with Jerry. They're more than willing to pick up extra work, to do that kind of things. Like, I could get this organized. I just, since that's not what the ordinance says, I need council to tell me that's what they wanna do.
And again, I would rather, if you had a choice between pruning your own tree or letting DTE do it for you, you might want to choose to prune it yourself versus what the village's landscaper might do. So, I'd like to really kind of move this forward because this was really supposed to be a discussion item. It seems like staff has already begun the process. We've had communications with chief, we've had communications with the road commission. I'm not sure we need to go outline these today, all 9 of these, and decide which ones are favorable or not. And unfortunately, ladies, as you're gonna learn, government moves slow. We only meet once a month. So what I would suggest is, let's take an action today. I'll even go ahead and make a motion that we have the staff begin to investigate these various items and come back to us with a report.
Can we hear from the residents who are here? Was she?
Yeah, I'm not done. All I'm saying is that's what I would like to see get done today, is that all we're doing is giving them direction, which is what I was understanding this was how it found its way onto our agenda. And then we're not gonna spend the next 45 minutes going through each one of these items line by line. First of all, I would like to prioritize the stop sign items within the village, which we have control over, versus $100,000 crosswalk signs and Oakland County Road Commission participation. Let's vet that piece out, but as far as action items, and even if it's action items that can start considering next month, I'd like to focus staff's efforts on getting answers, reports from the chief's thoughts on each of these various proposed signs, and bring it back next month to hopefully, and let me ask you a question. If we, as a council, voted to install a stop sign on a village road, it theoretically could be implemented immediately. We don't have to then go ask for anyone else's permission as long as we authorize it.
Correct, budget amendment.
All right,
It's not
so
budgeted for, so you'd have to do a
It's
budget
still
amendment.
beginning of summer, kids are still in school. If you can indulge us a month, and I'll still give you an opportunity to speak and tell us so that we know your perspective on each of your situations, but if you can indulge us for a month, I think that at least we can come back next month and tangibly address the stop signs, and then, I don't want to say, the term not back burner, but as the secondary, deal with what has to be done with the road commission and possible funding and all the other things that come with, other than sticking a stop sign in the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back in a month. I would love to see from the committee and the administration a list of like all 13 of these prioritized in like a ranking and their costs and the level of like resources needed to do that. And I'd love to also include like a proactive like DTE trimming because it grows so fast. And on the Brandingham, it was dangerous enough where the Birmingham School District moved our bus stop because they had somebody come out and say, this is not safe for the kids to stand at Brandingham and Wellington. So I'm hesitant to say I'd love to just send a letter to the people and have them clean it up because I just don't trust that that's going to actually happen. So included in one of those 13 items, I love for a proactive trimming program to be assessed and resourced out.
Okay, David?
Yeah, so completely agree with everything that you laid out, David. The other thing that I would just advocate for is when we talk about whether or not we send a letter or we send out letter then fines, or not letters and fines, but sorry, we do it and then we bill them for it, right? Is how that would operate.
I was just thinking maybe we budget to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm talking-
Maybe it becomes our project.
I'm saying whether it is, because I view it the same thing as the ditches, right? Where if we're sending letters out to residents, we probably should vote on that because it's going to get noisy for our residents. So I do see that as a policy
So my
decision.
suggestion on the letter was, the letter goes out saying, hey, you have a clear vision triangle on your property that needs to be maintained.
Yeah.
Will you do it? And then if you don't do it, then that's when the
Why
code
is it, will
enforcement.
you do it? Is
Well,
it
you
your
need to do it. You have to do
need
it,
to
right.
do it.
I should say that. I take that back, right, you have to do this. That was my whole point of, if I got that letter and I was like, okay, I could go out there and I could make it work and trim it down to this level and like round them off and like be happy with what it looked like, then maybe the resident will want to take it on their own. If they don't really care and it's like, no, go ahead and do what you're gonna do, then we go ahead and say, okay, that's, you know, this week is the week that we're going around this section of the village and doing the work, and the letters go out ahead of time saying, hey, there's gonna be work done on your property.
So why would a resident cut it themselves? Because if they don't cut it, we're just gonna cut it for them.
And we'll charge them.
Yeah,
we're not
that,
gonna
no,
charge
no,
them.
see,
We're not gonna
Mike,
charge
Dave,
them.
Mike and I are saying the same thing, where that's why I'm equating it to the ditch issue. Like, you can go clean your own culvert, or we're gonna come and do it, right? You're either gonna get charged for
We're not
it.
cleaning culverts, so.
No, but this was a conversation we previously had when we were talking about the flooding issues. We had talked about the fact that people have not been maintaining their culverts, or they built without pulling a permit and put in a driveway without the culvert in there. And so we were saying at the time, we never took a vote on it, that it's a policy decision on us on whether or not we want to start enforcing the fact that we can actually charge them for the work that's being done, or if we're going to take on that cost ourselves. My point is, though it's already our right to go ahead and charge them for the work that's being done, we should still take a vote as a council on that, because that would be a policy decision that we would feel the noise on.
100%. Yeah, I wouldn't even want to feel that noise unless we had the support of council
Yeah.
for those decisions.
Since we're discussing the budget tonight and we don't have a final budget, can we?
We're not discussing
We're
the
not
budget
discussing
tonight.
Oh, sorry.
There's no budget
Can
on
we
here.
build this into the budget since we haven't passed it yet?
I don't know how to build it into the budget without having
It's
council say
theoretically
that
in the
they're
budget.
priorities, but I do think that if you're concerned, like, oh, it doesn't get put in the budget, now it can't get done, that you're just gonna have to do a budget amendment on those.
I
We
just don't
did
want to spend
those-
the money on the budget amendment with like plant.
I know, but I had to go, I mean, it was a new council, but we've met multiple times to try and set goals. I needed that information when I was building the budget. If you could get consensus tonight on goals, but we don't even have cost estimates, so I don't know how we would be able to do that. So I think at this point, we're gonna have to do budget amendments for these type of things because they weren't
We have money set aside for capital improvements.
We do.
So how wouldn't we just allocate some of that money to this? I thought last year was 140, this year I think it's,
I have 150 for
Yeah.
different projects. I'm waiting for council to tell me what projects they want to spend that money on.
understood.
Yeah.
We're not making that decision today. What I'd like
Okay.
to do is I'd like to get everything, like Mike suggested, I'd like that in my hands. I would like all this written up in my hands. If you guys could supplement that report with like a little bit of, I haven't seen it, but a little synopsis of like how you got to that. We've heard from these ladies on their intersections. I don't want to go into tonight, but I personally am struggling to understand what the concern is at Woodlore and Franklin Road. So if we could just get a little explanation on each of the items, all that we're asking to do right now is go ahead and have staff put together with the committee a full report for us to take as a consideration item next month.
Yep. Yeah, just Angelina was asking a valid question about the budget. That's where that comes back to. I think if the infrastructure committee can give me some background about where you came up with these priorities, one by one, what were the reasonings for them? I've already done the rest of the research. I'll build a report. We can get to council to talk about priorities at
If you
the
want
next
to
meeting.
prioritize them, if that's how you want us to look at it, is your most important to your least important, or?
I'm inclined to take votes on the 3 stop signs that are within our control tonight, and then prioritize the ones that aren't in our control, because those will take up resources from you.
It's not happening.
No. We
It's
have
not
to go and look at them.
We have to absorb this, because then, like,
I don't think we were looking for anything immediate. We were
Yeah.
looking to start the
So should we,
that we can.
would your recommendation be prioritize the ones within our control and prioritize the ones without?
I
our
would think
control?
so.
Okay, that's what.
well, that to me would be a priority, yes. The ones you can control, would, to me, if I was doing a priority list, would be at the top of my priorities. I wouldn't make a priority trying to get a $350,000,
Why don't
budget
the
for a
infrastructure
crosswalk.
committee and I get on a Zoom call sometime later next week and we can organize how you guys want to put your information together with some of the facts that I gathered to create a report for council, and then I can get a better understanding of where you're coming from with these requests and like where your priorities are.
Good.
Let me add one other thing. I don't know if these are considered noxious weeds, okay? There's a definition for them, but if they are noxious weeds and the village or city or whoever cuts them down, they can become a lien on the property. So we want to take that into account when you're writing a letter. It gives a description of what these noxious weeds are, excuse me. It's another enforcement mechanism.
I mean, we might all have different thoughts on this. To me personally, I would like to see these items get addressed for means of helping the public and not trying to use this as a revenue source. We have other revenue problems we need to worry about, and a fine here or there and a permit here or there is not gonna fix our problems. So I'd rather focus on what needs to be done and not be worried about penalizing somebody so much for their failures. If we think it's something that's important enough that needs to get done, let's just go do it. That's what we should do. So, do we need a motion even to move forward?
Nope.
This was only supposed to be a discussion item. I think we're all generally comfortable that staff is now part of this project. And we would like to have a report back for next month's meeting with the committee's priorities and a brief explanation.
Yep.
And I would be in a position next month to address at least the stop sign items or any of those other items that you have an answer on already.
Yep, I'm clear on that. And then I think that the infrastructure committee, just as a point, did a great job coming together and brainstorming. We got a little lost in the weeds here right now. What could happen, what can happen in the future is like in a very similar situation, the infrastructure committee kind of gathers this and gets it in a report for council before we head to road commission and that. But this is a new committee, so we're learning how that works. Staff, I have plenty of direction. I'll prepare a report and circle back with the infrastructure committee and get it back to you next month.
Sounds good. All right. Once we moved it, so this is the first reading of the wireless and small cell wireless communication facilities ordinance. Well, you know what, hold on a second. Since we're doing adjusting, let's move that consideration to the end. Let's deal with our 3 contracts so we can send Chief home.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I
Meg,
can-
explain
I'll
to us where you're at on the 3 different contracts you've negotiated and what you're asking us to do.
Absolutely. So tonight in front of you, you're going to see your command officer's contract, your patrol officer contract, and a contract for our chief of police. For the command officer and the patrol officer, the outcomes of these contracts were previously discussed with council. It's been a long process of negotiation with 2 different unions, working to get these in place, but we've had a lot of really healthy conversation and gotten us into a good spot. A lot of good faith shown on both sides of the negotiation table here for that. I have presented those to the substantial changes to you during a different meeting there. So we're going to go ahead tonight and take a vote to ratify the contracts that we had previously discussed. And in addition to the command officer and the patrol officer, we are addressing the police chief contract. Once they're all executed by all parties, those will become part of the public record, because until they're technically all executed for the command officers and the patrol officer, it's still in an active negotiation. They're not attached to your agenda item. However, once we get all those signatures, they will be available for everyone to review.
I make a motion to ratify the police chief contract.
Just that one?
I would bundle all 3.
Wait, where?
Well, hold on a second. So, guys,
What are the
wait,
other
so
two?
let's do this easily.
COAM
So,
and-
these are 3 contracts. I want to do this properly. I had actually asked, well, Meg did it actually on her own, but, if you want to make a proposed resolution, I'd ask that you take a look at this, which really specifically addresses each of the contracts so that we're very clear on what we're doing.
You want me to read this?
Kind of.
All right. Resolution to approve police contracts. Whereas the Village of Franklin has engaged in negotiations with the Police Officers Association of Michigan Command Officers Association of Michigan and the Franklin Bingham Farms Chief of Police, and whereas the Village Council has reviewed and considered the proposed contracts for the Police Officers Association of Michigan, the Command Officers Association of Michigan, and the Chief of Police, now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council hereby approves and adopts the following employment agreements effective as negotiated therein. Number one, the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Franklin and the Police Officers Association of Michigan. Number two, the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Franklin and the Command Officers Association of Michigan. And number three, the employment agreement for the Franklin Bingham Farms Chief of Police.
Second.
Any further discussion? Dan, anything?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
Boom.
Absolutely.
Done.
Thank you. Twice now. Meg, good job.
Good job. This is a big one.
Good job. Okay, now we can go back to consider the first reading of the wireless and small cell wireless communication facilities ordinance. We had this in front of us last month. We asked Chris Dusen to prepare a memo, which he did, and maybe Stuart to answer questions that came out of that memo. As you know, our existing ordinance were not compliant with some of the state and federal laws. We asked Chris Dusen to modify the ordinances and the planning commission to review it, which they did so. In the course of doing so, it kind of came to everyone's attention that there were certain areas within the statutes where some level of flexibility could be implemented, which wouldn't change the substance of the acts themselves. And the commission did so. It came to us in the form of Chris's memo. The April 27th memo is the one that describes all the proposed changes. And I guess before we have Stuart, does anyone have any questions of Stuart or Peter or Meg of any of these? And I think Dan's probably the best source to answer questions along with Stuart.
Yeah.
Because the two of them were participants in this. But Chris broke down for us each of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 areas where some flexibility was implemented. Does anybody have questions on any one of these specific ones?
The only question that I would have is for Meg. During the conversation, there was discussion about some of the obligations onto staff where it was unnecessary.
Yes.
Is that in this draft or was that removed?
It was removed from here, and that came down to reporting
Yeah.
and there was a lot of discussion about that in planning commission, and I could see both sides, but that was a huge lift for staff. So that actually was not included in the draft.
Thank you.
Angelina?
I forgot to ask this the first time. Was the vote unanimous from planning commission to?
I think so.
It
yeah.
was.
In the end, it was, yeah.
You mean after you beat them down?
No, the one that she mentioned, I had to acquiesce, so. After I was beaten down, you mean?
Thank you. That's it.
Does anybody have comments on specific sections? Dan, why don't you give us any thoughts you have? You were part of this. Anything you didn't
It's been a while
like, or you
since I
didn't
was a
really
part of it.
support when you were?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Abby, you got anything on this one?
Nope.
Seltzer?
Motion to approve.
All right, let's, okay.
Oh, was that?
No, that's fine. You can have a motion in a second. We can still have our discussion. Go ahead. Pam, do you have anything?
No, no.
Okay, so I do. I have a small handful.
Okay.
In three, whatever this is, 65.03, 3C. Small cell wireless communication facilities located in a historic district shall be concealed within or behind architectural features or buildings. So I understand B ahead of it, any alteration made to a structure, and then I understand A, that you shall not alter the character, but how is one, we already have 3 already in the historic district sitting right here at the corner, a pole and a little pie on the shop. How are you gonna hide that pie with an architectural feature or a structure?
I mean, that's gonna be, I mean, the existing ones are currently non-conforming, I mean, are approved non-conforming, right? They're grandfathered into this ordinance, because they were approved previously
Whatever,
during
that's
application.
irrelevant. My point is the example of what is the point of this one? It's in the historic district, it's on a pole, it's got a little thing at the top. How are you gonna hide the thing at the top with either a feature or a building?
They need to be creative.
Well, how would that even be within our authority, though,
I mean,
right?
again, they have the right to do all these things,
Yeah.
okay? We're just trying to make it a little more, I don't even wanna say challenging, we just wanna have a little bit more control. So in a historic district, yes, we wanna make it, we don't wanna have a historic structure be permanently altered, so I get B. And I totally get A, we wanna keep it in the structure. I just don't see how C is a feasible item. I don't even know where it came from.
What number are you on again? I'm sorry.
It's page 7.
Page 7, up at the top, C, which is location in the historic district. Small cell facilities located in a district shall be concealed within or behind architectural features or buildings. These things are supposed to be on top of telephone poles. How do we do that?
Top of this page. Right there. Oh, down.
Okay, 37, there it
It's
is.
the C right there.
Do we have any say in this?
Again, Mike, we have a little bit of say in these certain areas. but
Yeah,
We need
so-
to be cognizant that we're not creating lawsuits for ourselves either.
Right, so for the wireless cell phone facilities located in the historic district, I think part of that is, just we have a glut of wires running down Franklin Road. And so if anything we can do to help, reduce that number of aerial vision, that would be ideal. So whether it's behind, if we can find a way to do it behind architectural feature or building, it's possible. Otherwise, I mean, there could be exceptions if there's no possible way of achieving that, but we'd like them to at least consider that as an option, depending on where they decide to co-locate or locate it.
I think you're bringing up something really important here, David. Small cell wireless communication facilities. There are other communication facilities in the historic district that are not small cell, but they are communication and we had no choice about their location. I'm specifically thinking of the one that's either going to Hersheyvale or, we call it the Crypt. It's down Franklin Road, and it's this big white concrete box
Oh, yeah.
on the east side of the road. They just put it in, and it's some utility.
It's in a triangle, right?
Yeah, well, it's four-sided, but it's enormous, 12 feet by like 8 feet. And we ended up, because it was so ugly, we put rocks and shrubbery there because it was unsightly. This was back, when we were finishing up Franklin Road. I'm only mentioning that, not to throw us off track, but to say, I support the intention of this. I think it's bigger than small cell wireless communication. If you're talking about something on a pole. This happens to be on the ground that we were able to disguise.
So one of the options, for example, like they put small cell towers like on buildings locally, like in elementary schools or middle schools, and they might be behind a facade that you might not see exactly, but where the line of sight, where the communication might not be completely obstructed, but the visual obstruction exists. Either it's an angle which you can't perceive it, or something along those lines. So if it's maybe not necessarily on a pole, but if there's another way within the historic district, you can create a line of sight obstruction, so you don't see it. That's kind of the intent behind it.
That's what I thought, and I do support that. Maybe it's worded to
Black and white.
Black and white, yeah. I was trying to find another word, but I couldn't.
The
Okay.
Small Cell Act is not very helpful, but it does allow for the village to conceal in the historic district. It says the village may adopt written objective requirements for reasonable, technically feasible, non-discriminatory, neutral design or concealment measures in a historic district. So it's not very descriptive. I think it meets the law. Now, how we achieve that is something different, as long as we
Okay.
comply.
It's good, I'm just raising a comment. In further down, number 7, access, this is, I mean, technically, guys, where it says, subject to approval by the planning commission, respectfully, you guys don't approve anything. That would have to be approved by the village council.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just say one more thing about this other one up here in C? If it's in historic district, it's outside, it goes to the Historic District Commission, doesn't it? Don't they have to approve?
I doubt, if we don't have the authority, I can't imagine that they would have more authority to prevent it than we would.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a fair
I mean,
question.
so when a site plan comes to us though, and it's in the historic district, we should rope in the historic commission.
It should go to them. The point is, again, it should go to them, and the historic
And is
district
there
should
any
make sure
control?
A gets taken care of, and they should make sure that B gets taken care of. The
Yeah.
question is, should they make sure that C gets taken care of? And how do they make sure that that happens? And I'm struggling with it, but I'm ready to move on.
So with 7 for approval, I believe, is that referring to the site plan review that we approve and then send to council for ratification? Or is it the other way? Is it we make a recommendation to council like normally with an ordinance,
Correct.
and then they
Be like
approve
anything.
the site?
Be like a site plan approval, yeah.
Yes.
So it should either say approval by village council or recommendation by planning commission to village council.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, village council can make that proposed change when they
Right.
adopt.
Okay. In 9, just a typo, you guys must have done some repaginating, but that should say item 6 in the 3rd line, because minimum setbacks is 6. For number 11, applicant shall identify who will be responsible for maintenance. I'd like to add and emergencies, so we have emergency contact as well. And then, this is something for Chris, in 14 signs, one non-commercial sign, and I was even surprised that Chris would have included this. What does a non-commercial sign mean, and can we?
Yeah, right, we can't distinguish
we
between
can't-
commercial or
Just-
non-commercial, yep,
Just one sign, I think it needs to be.
yep.
Got it.
Those are my only comments. Pam, it seemed like you had a couple more, maybe?
No, I think, no, I'm fine with this. I mean, we've been talking about this for some time. I have an interest to close it out and be able to move on. So,
Peter, could you read that language from C again?
Yes, from the Small Cell Act, right?
Yep.
It says, an authority, that's you, may adopt written objective requirements for reasonable, technically feasible, non-discriminatory, and technologically neutral design or concealment measures in a historic district.
So what I'm wondering is, because this is a all or nothing, and we were previously we previously went through a period where people were pointing to an ordinance saying you have the ability to block this, and we didn't, because of the ordinance, that we would include language on the end that would say something to the effect of, unless determined to be technically infeasible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For C.
Yeah.
Okay, that,
Yes,
that.
good point.
at
That's-
least
that
at
feels
least
like
that
a good
takes the shell, 'cause
compromise.
this language means you're going to the ZBA every
Correct.
time you can't figure out how to do this.
Yeah. That makes sense, I like it.
I can live with that.
Yep.
All right, so I had 3 proposed changes. One was a change to 3C, correction in number 7 to changing planning commission to village council, correcting the typo in number 9, and then, if anyone doesn't have a problem, adding the word "and emergencies" after the maintenance in 11. If that's the case, and then removal of the word non-commercial in number 14.
Yep.
So Dana's got all those on the record, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to, let me get what we're calling this, to have the first reading, to make this the first reading of the wireless and small cell wireless communication facilities ordinance with the proposed changes I made.
And David.
And David made, right.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. D, consider amending a restated license to use public right-of-way, public way for 32350 Franklin Road. So I guess for Abby and Dan and Angelina, last council was asked to consider the license that the owners at 32350 have to have some fencing in public right-of-way. It was considered at the time whether or not the license should be revoked. The council at that time determined that it should not and suggested that some changes be made to the license agreement between the village and those homeowners. And I believe we've received, hopefully two things, with the full proposed license between the village and the owners, as well as, I think, something that Peter passed out today, which highlights where changes were made between the original contract that the village had with those residents and the changes that came out of the approval to keep it in place back last year, and some of the changes that were recommended to it at the time of that approval. So let's start with, does anybody have any questions about the red line changes that were made, or?
Yeah, so I'll kick us off. So dating back to when we first went across this, one of the things that, the whole reason that this came up, among other reasons, was we have an active license within the village for somebody's use of our public right-of-way, that they put a fence in our public right-of-way. And so we went through an information gathering exercise around that to understand what was the license, when was it drafted, when was it executed, so on and so forth. It was very sloppy how it had been previously administered, even signed. And so we made the decision at that point to execute a new license. At that time, we also considered the possible revocation of the license. However, at the time, and I still feel the same way, is that I do not want to punish a resident for the past decisions of a council that I disagree with. Meaning that I don't fundamentally, as a policy standpoint, I do not agree with allowing or permitting people to capture our right-of-way with a literal boundary, the fence. However, a village council at one time did, and I don't feel personally that it's just to now cost at the person's expense to move it out of the right-of-way or to remove it altogether. But through that, I did want to make an amendment to or at least make sure that there was a provision within the license that basically said that if they were to remove or replace the fence, that it would then come out of the right-of-way. So essentially, over time, we could correct that well, it wouldn't even necessarily be mandatory. It would come back to the council, and then the council sitting at the time could say, yes, continue to take our right-of-way, or no, move it out of the right-of-way when you put the new fence in. The language that I initially put in included, it read, licensees shall not replace or move the fence or any portion thereof without the express written consent of the village, which may be withheld in its sole discretion. So again, a couple of important things within this is shall not replace or move. This was the language that I saw up until I received the most recent draft that was contained within our packet, which then changed remove, I believe, or replace, sorry. It included modify, but then it also has a condition where it says licensee, this is added language, licensee may replace sections of the fence if repairs are needed but such replacement must be consistent with the fence in its current state. And my concern with that is that gives significant liberties for interpretation to say, well, I'll just continue to replace this portion of the fence or this section of the fence, and I'll just keep doing that. Or I'll leave one post in and replace the entire thing. And then that goes completely against my whole policy point of, at some point, we, without financially penalizing the homeowner, should get the fence out, or at least afford ourselves the opportunity at no expense to the homeowner to get the fence out of our right of way. And I believe that this current language provides too much leeway for interpretation of that. And so I do not support the inclusion of the licensee may replace sections of the fence if repairs are needed, but such replacements must be consistent with the fence in its current state.
Okay, so, and what about the second half of the seconds?
If the village decides in its sole discretion to approve moving the fence shall be moved so that the fence.
What was your language? You want to incorporate your previous language?
So, again, my previous language, read the so everybody can read and follow along. I'm talking about, section 10, termination revocation. So the sentence immediately before that red portion is the sentence that I added in, which was licensee shall not replace or move. It's now been changed to licensee shall not modify, replace, or move. And so, if I remember correctly, it's just adding modify, totally fine with that. But then after you finish that sentence, you have the licensee may replace sections of the fence if repairs are needed, but such replacements must be consistent with the fence in its current state. I would strike that portion.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, I like that.
I would make a motion to approve based upon David's revisions.
All right, let's get a second if someone wants a second, then we'll continue our discussion.
I'll second it.
All right, so Angelina, your comments, and then Pam, you're next.
So this isn't the license that the last council voted on. When did it change and by whom?
No, this is the license that used to be in place. When the council approved it, approved not revoking it, and approved having the council enter into a new contract with the owner, additional provisions were made as part of that motion, which are being incorporated in here, with the exception of some of the items that David is adding, which is be something that we,
This was like October of last year?
Had to be before that, because this is
no,
before
this was
me.
like May of next
Yeah.
year. This was literally a year ago.
Yeah, this goes back years.
This was a year ago.
So why is it just bringing up now and why was it changed and by what committee or by what means?
Well,
Our lawyer did it.
the past council had agreed to work to getting a new license in place. And so, for whatever reason for the delay, it's now before us.
But with new language that you put in?
Correct.
Well, it was always supposed to have new language. That was the
I
point.
tried showing red line changes of what was significantly changed.
Why was the language modified from what the previous council wanted?
There was no specific there was no specific language added. There were concepts. There was the concepts, each of these were concepts that have now found its way into language.
About a year ago, the village discussed this and said, we'll approve it with these proposed revisions. One of them was the removal of the fence. I think another one was not having the dogs out front. I can't recall, I think we captured everything, but.
Yeah, vegetation,
Yes.
Vegetation.
Vegetation not protruding beyond where the
Correct.
fence is. So those were the conditions, we worked on the language.
and the dogs, those were the two main ones.
Yeah.
And then David really, this last one was a suggestion that David added that wasn't part of that discussion, which in your communications with the owner, they seem to not have a problem with incorporating.
Yeah, so the owner had, and I recall maybe running by David or something to that effect. I just want to point out the second sentence, that same paragraph, does that assuage council's concern? It says, license shall at all times be remain revocable at the will of the village.
Yeah.
No, I won't change the fact that I want that sentence removed, because This whole thing is completely at will.
And-
We could remove it at any
100%.
point.
Okay.
I want notification that if they're taking some type of an action on that fence, that we be provided the opportunity to consider it in whether or not we want to continue to have the fence in a right of way.
So the second from last sentence, you're proposing removal?
Strike.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it appropriate to have had executed this with the resident without having council see it? Like, there's
I
already
don't think they,
signatures on here.
I think Peter sent it to him for review and they just signed it and sent it
Yeah.
back. I don't think anybody was planning on entering into
Then
this
you
contract.
It's just what we have, they're gonna have to execute a new one,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course, 'cause
with
this
these
is-
And you
changes.
worked with them on the language without clearing it by council first.
No, we worked on this with trustee Sally, with trustee
With the legal
Goldberg, with
committee.
trustee
Okay,
Hanson.
okay, that's what I was asking. So the legal committee worked on this language.
Correct.
And then you sent it to them, they signed it.
Yes.
Okay, and that has been going on like the last 8 months, or 12 months.
Yeah,
Bits
there were
and
delays
spurts.
in between.
It was dormant for a while, and I'd have to look through my notes why,
Okay,
but it just resurfaced a couple of months.
okay. So my comments are, and they were the same reason why I voted against the budget amendment 3 months ago. I don't feel like I'm going to validate or verify or make a past invalid action or non-compliant action by previous council or previous administrator valid because they failed to do their job. Like, I don't agree with this, and I understand trustee Sally's point of, I don't wanna put it on the homeowner to pull up the fence, but I would, as a village, say that we pull up the fence and we pay for it, because it was our ineffective management, our ineffective administration, our lack of proper execution that led to this. And I didn't run for council to come up here and make good all the past invalid actions of
Why are you
previous
making it,
councils.
why are you saying it's invalid? They voted and they took an action. What makes it invalid, Angelina?
No, the last executed license. Like, it was
It's not-
poorly
yeah.
executed
Okay, but so,
20 years ago.
okay, so
whatever it
you're,
was.
but that's a technicality of whether or not it was executed properly. The prior council still issued the license. And then we actually considered revoking it. And then after
What council executed the license? I thought it was.
20-some years ago,
It was executed by council.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not
it was approved by
enforced.
council.
In
I don't,
perpetuity?
Yeah.
yeah,
It
it's
was
a
a license
license.
in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So then
Which
why-
gave us a right to revoke it at any time.
So
A
then
year
why-
ago, we confronted the owners about it. There were concerns about things that were going on there, their dogs and the vegetation. We had a discussion. The council could have revoked it at that time. The council chose not to revoke it. The council chose to instead enter into a dialogue with them. The residents agreed to the addition of these additional constraints on the license. And we are now finally getting around to dotting the i's and crossing the t's on what was already approved by not only a council 20-some years ago, but ratified by a council of ours a year ago. And now this council is being asked to actually go through the process of finalizing the document, which incorporates things that a council agreed upon. So, okay, so you're not in support of this. Anybody else have any
One more
comments?
question. Do we have any other licenses like this in Franklin?
I can't answer that question.
I wouldn't know off the top of my head. I know this is unique, but I would have no idea.
Could we maybe have an inventory of our licenses at some point?
You can ask anybody to do whatever you want, or you can do it yourself. We have a motion on the table in a second, so any further discussion?
I want to clarify one point though. No council, I don't want a council member to be able to direct Meg or staff to go do that type of work without us collectively voting on it, because that is staff time. So fundamentally, I agree with you. I'm just making clear that, like, if we want to do a survey of the community, it should come at a vote, not like any individual region.
And
That's a good point.
Yeah, I appreciate that, thank you. And I would say that, like, so to come across this is just a paper in a street file. Like, I'm working on digitizing files, but there is no good way for me to just be able to, like, go into the computer and be able to figure that out. I would have to pull the paper file on every home and see if it exists or not, or anything similar like that exists. Which, we're working on the process of digitizing our records. That can definitely be something that's like on a radar while we're scanning files and stuff.
Is it common for communities to keep an inventory of the licenses of homes that have absorbed the right of way.
I don't think it's common for communities to allow homes to absorb the right of way.
This was a deal that was made years ago by a council, and it's a different world, a way different council.
So let's go back and make sure we're clear on everything. Part of the investigation that we determined was, we were under the impression that the entire fence in the front yard, which was the fence that was in concern of the people that complained, we came to find that the actual portion of the fence that's actually in the right-of-way is 6 inches, and the balance of the fence is on their property. So the only issue is it's a fence in the front yard, where there are fences in the front yard throughout the historic district that are legal non-conforming that can stay forever. This is the only one in the historic district that we could actually take away from them because of 6 inches. There was another 6 to 8 feet added on the side yard, which to this day, nobody has complained about because it only abuts the post office. And the intention when we did our research with the prior council of why that area was done was because of that property owner's proximity to the post office and the fact that post office people backed out into their property all the time. So when we revisited this, we concluded nothing to deal with on that side, although David's suggestion would probably be important there. If they wanted to move that, it would then have to come back out of the right of way on the side. If they wanted to change the fence in the front, they'd have to pull it back 6 inches. So that's how we got to where we're at, and we're trying to keep it in a situation where we still can take this away if in the future it's determined that it shouldn't exist.
So we have a motion
We have
and
a
a
motion and
second?
a second. This isn't a public discussion, so we have a motion and a second. Anybody have any further comment? All in favor?
No, hold up.
That's not fair.
Procedurally, we ask people to hold their public comments until the portion of the agenda, so absolutely, we should be taking public comment on it.
Yeah, you can allow the
You
residents.
get 3
to speak.
minutes. Speak.
So
3 minutes, Dana.
when the public comments are, public comments, they're related to non-agenda items. I think that's what our policy was. If it's an agenda item.
I don't have to make every item a discussion item of the public, but I will, for the rest of my council members, allow it to take place. So let's hear what you have to say. Start the clock.
Good evening, Natalia Shoup, 32334 Franklin Road, and I'm here to address the safety and well-being for our family had for over 5 years with this fence. Not all the facts are given to the new council members. The previous permit was automatically terminated after Heenan's did not maintain the liability insurance for over 20 years, which was required for the permit. And as you can see, there is, it states that it should not, it's automatically terminated. So it was a long time ago, but the village did not take any actions. And the immediate removal of the fence. This fence and no action from the village to our complaints and still is an ongoing threat to our family safety, mental health, especially to our youngest son who was attacked twice by the dogs. This threat was one of the reasons our family was forced to move out of our home in Franklin in late 2023, just 1.5 miles away, after a second dog attack occurred when our son was 5 years old. We hope and still hope to return to our home in Franklin once the village properly addresses this situation, along with other serious violations, including repeating breaches of our rights and privacy by the village officials and employees. When our son was attacked, there was no liability insurance enforced by the Heenans. And there has been many violations regarding this fence. And Mr. Denon, under oath, stated that no one wanted to send any violations to the Heenans. The fence in the front is not allowed per village ordinances at all, not 6-inch, not 12-inch, especially by the sidewalks. And all the fences has to be 2 feet away setback from the village right-of-way, not on 8 feet of the public land. If you approve this amendment, it sets the precedent to allow other residents to have fences on public yards and allowing residents to occupy village land and in the front yards building the fences. So this fence should be, we're asking not to approve or at least consider to look at all evidence that we presented in in January 4th, 2023. It took more than a year for this matter to be brought to the council. And we are asking not to approve this amendment, and it should have been at expense of the Heenans. This fence should have been removed long time ago because they violated for over 20 years the original permit. And that's why it was, and there was forged signatures according to the forensic expert. So that's why we are asking, those are serious violations, and it was, David Solly, they were the ones violating, not the village. There was some village improper, but they were the ones who violated the original agreement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Oh, I'm opposed.
Okay, motion passes. Our last item are 25, 26 water and sewer rates.
Yeah.
Meg, you want to give us a brief on that?
I'm gonna go real quick here. So had a great meeting with WRC, and talked about our water and sewer rates. We can see and expect a small increase, 2.1%. It's less than $9 per household. It's actually comparatively across other communities, a great increase. Just to frame it for everyone, in 2020, you saw an 11.3% increase. So this year, we're looking at a 2.1% increase here. Let's see. Last year, I went and watched some of the discussion that was around this when it came forward. There was questions regarding the capital account and, do we have the authority to spend money out of the capital account? So how it kind of works is we collect these rates, we pass them over almost like a millage and a lump sum rate to WRC. WRC then handles debt obligation, capital improvements, and then just general rates. So we do not have the authority, it's not our pot of money to go in and say, we're not gonna raise rates, we're gonna take it out of the capital, but we do approve purchases out of the capital. To give you an idea, this year there's about $300,000 or so in our capital account with WRC. Again, we don't have the ability to say we're not gonna raise rates, we're just gonna take it out of there, because that money is there to protect us in case of an emergency, and also because capital improvements to our sewage system are very expensive. For example, I can watch that is planned improvements start dwindling in the next like 3 or 4 years. So the only other thing that I would mention that I thought was interesting is that right now we carry some debt that was used for the original alarm system, and a lot of it was the grinder pump alarm system. And each year, Franklin pays about $212,000 towards this debt. Well, that debt is going to fall off in 2028. So it is possible that we'll see rates start to decrease at that point. So we've got about 2 more years in this debt obligation with WRC. That'll fall off. All in all, a lot of communities are obviously seeing much higher rate increases. 2.1%, less than $9 on average per household is very minimal, especially comparatively from what we had seen in the past, even in Franklin. I can answer questions that we might have about that. I had a pretty detailed meeting with WRC, got a lot of data. So if there's something that I can do to provide some clarification, please let me know.
Just one quick question.
Yep.
If you don't have it now, I can get it later. If we had an expenditure that exceeded what we had the amount in, would that still fall back on the residents?
No.
Okay.
So WRC does, this happens all the time, emergency, you're gonna wipe out what you have in capital. The way that, now it depends on case by case, so we can't take it directly to the bank, but typically what WRC will do is a lot like what we saw with this debt that we carry. They give us like a loan for the improvement, we then absorb the debt and pay that off over time with our rates. And that's sort of what we saw with the grinder pump alarm upgrades, because they were substantial. They had wiped out our capital bank for a while, and we thus had to absorb some debt. So WRC is large enough to be able to fund and manage those right in-house, which we're very fortunate for.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'd make a motion to approve.
So motion to approve the 3 suggested rate increases.
Yes.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Anyone want to further discuss?
Just put on the flying around not yet landing list. You know, this system's been in place for, what, 20 years or so? It's gonna wear out. It was a compromise agreement after a big fight in the village back in 2001 or something like that. I'd like to, at some point, when, maybe next year, we talk about putting in a sewer system and converting the village to a regular old gravity system that's gonna be cheaper to operate and isn't breaking all the time like this one is. That is, it's nothing to do with this, but it's.
You can't.
You mean to
We can't
eliminate
afford-
septic?
You can't
Yeah.
in Franklin, because all of our basements, all of our plumbing's hung.
Yep. And I asked that question, and then I said, who else is like us? Because this is really unique, the way that our grinder
Yeah,
pumps it.
plumbing.
Pretty much no other community in Oakland County is like this. There's a couple over by like Orchard Lake that are very small, but they were very clear that even though it's costly to maintain, that this is what we're committed to in
Okay, so
maintaining.
that
You
decision
can't
was
create
made
gravity
forever?
when it's not established.
In the way that we were developed, yep.
I just, you know, okay.
Most sewer
okay.
lines come in at the bottom of your basement and then
Yeah.
go down from there.
Yeah.
Our
that's what I'm-
plumbing's up here, so if you were trying to connect into the sewer system down here, you can't. Our
Got it,
plumbing's.
okay, thank you for, I did not know that.
Me either,
And, I'm,
good.
and it's just a system that's fraught with problems, but, okay.
Yeah, that's what happens converting septic to sewer.
And I asked for other solutions or better capital planning, but there really isn't. I mean, I can share the data that I received from WRC. They were probably thought I was crazy, but I got a lot of it and did spend a lot of time with them to fully understand where we were at with this.
Oh, and I think we went through this back in the early 2000s
That was
to
my point.
arrive at this.
Well, but there were other silly reasons for going with this, mostly having to do with wrecking trees in the right of way and thinking maybe that they'd never grow back, and other reasons.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, well, you know, anyway, it's, my question was answered, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so we have a motion and a second. If we don't have any further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. That was our last item, so if I can get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mike, second from David, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Good job, everyone.
Thank you.